I became the god of light. Welcome back, brave explorers of impossible worlds. We are excited to have you here to continue this odyssey together. Before we continue, everything you'll hear is pure fiction. So please don't try to replicate combat techniques at home. This wonderful story in all its rights belong to its brilliant original author. We are only the messengers of entertainment. Want another dose of adventure? Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a single chapter. And if you can't wait, our Patreon has exclusive surprises you'll love. Chapter 402 The Dazzling Gates of Heaven. An 8 or 9-year-old boy looked up at the elderly man with white hair and even a receding hairline, and asked curiously. Pope Joseph looked down at the child and smiled kindly. Child, God is always watching over this world. As long as you have God in your heart, then God will always be with you and will always protect you. Really? The boy asked in surprise. Is God powerful? Saint Joseph was very patient with this future believer. He smiled and said, Child, legend has it that the world was created by God. God completed the feat of creation in 7 days. Isn't that amazing? The boy thought for a moment, then nodded and said in a childish, worshipful voice, Grandpa, God is so amazing. Pope Joseph was taken aback, then laughed. He patted the boy's head and continued, God is all-knowing and all-powerful. There is nothing he cannot do. Those who believe in him will be protected by him. The boy suddenly remembered something and asked curiously, then how does God compare to Ra? He suddenly recalled that there had been a sun god before, and wondered which was more powerful, the god the Pope had mentioned or the sun god. Pope Joseph, who had been smiling broadly at the boy, froze upon hearing the question. However, despite his complex emotions, his long-held devotion to God compelled him to answer immediately. Child, God is all-knowing and all-powerful. We should not judge God's power with our suspicions. That is disrespectful and blasphemous. We cannot even imagine God's power. Although he didn't answer directly, the implied meaning was clear. Oh, the boy responded with a hint of disappointment, then suddenly remembered something and asked expectantly, then, Grandpa Pope, when will God appear? In his mind, God was so powerful that if he appeared, he could grant all wishes. So, when he asked this question, his heart was full of anticipation. Pope Joseph, who had been barely maintaining his composure, finally broke down completely. His smile was forced, and he felt uneasy. This question had always been a thorn in his side, and now that the child had asked it, he could no longer ignore it. The Egyptian sun god had appeared, so what about the all-knowing and all-powerful Lord? When would Lord descend? For thousands of years, religion had almost become an appendage of politics, and faith had become a tool in the hands of rulers. Yet, even so, Lord had not descended. Has Lord abandoned us? Pope Joseph thought sadly. Although he felt pessimistic, he forced a smile and said to the child before him, Yes, God will eventually descend. The boy didn't think too much about it and beamed with joy upon hearing the answer. At this moment, one of the guards who had been protecting the Pope stepped forward and whispered to Saint Joseph, Your Holiness, the meeting with the bishops is about to begin. Pope Saint Joseph nodded, then reached out and patted the child's head kindly, saying, Child, I have to leave. Go find your father quickly. The boy nodded earnestly, watching the group escort the Pope away, and immediately ran to find his father. He quickly found his father, a white man who looked to be in his 30s, praying. Just then, his father finished praying and took the boy's hand, leading him out of the church. Once outside, the boy couldn't help but tell his father about his experience. The white man was astonished. At this moment, the boy asked curiously, Father, is what the Pope said true? Will God really come? Robert was taken aback, then after a moment's thought, he answered confidently, Yes, God will come. Just as he created this beautiful world, he will appear before us as promised. Clearly, he was also a devout Christian, with no doubt about the Lord in his heart. That's great. The boy clapped his hands with a smile. Just as they finished speaking, a soft laugh came from beside them. Robert frowned slightly and turned to look with the boy. They saw a stylishly dressed, beautiful woman in her early 20s, carrying an expensive handbag, looking at them with disdain. What era are we living in? Still believing in God, believing that the world was created by God, Lillian had come to the Vatican for tourism, but she found it somewhat amusing to see this middle-aged man, deeply indoctrinated with faith, spreading it to children. If your God really existed, he would have appeared long ago, she said calmly, raising her chin. Upon hearing this, Robert's brows furrowed instantly. Looking at the bewildered woman before him, anger flashed in his eyes. What did you say? He snapped. The little boy beside him, hearing his father's words, replied in a childish voice, "Auntie, God is definitely real." Lillian, hearing her aunt's words, felt veins bulge on her forehead. She looked down at the little boy, her eyes filled with pity. Look at this poor child, what this man had taught him. At the same time, she, who had only spoken casually, was now somewhat angry. She covered her mouth and chuckled, "If you're going to have faith, you should believe in a God who has appeared, like the sun god Ra. At least he appeared. And the God you speak of," she paused, then continued, "the sun god Ra has appeared, but the all-knowing and all-powerful God hasn't appeared yet. Isn't that obvious? Even if he hasn't appeared, at least some miracle should have occurred, don't you think?" Finally, she glanced sideways at the two of them and let out another soft laugh. "You?" Robert's face flushed red with anger, his glare filled with resentment, yet he didn't know how to refute her. The woman's words had struck a nerve. However, even so, he wouldn't be easily swayed by her words. He firmly believed in God's existence. Lillian, seeing the man's frustrated state, felt a surge of satisfaction, a smug look spreading across her pretty face. Just as they were arguing, not far from the church, a young man wearing a white baseball cap, who had been looking down, suddenly glanced up at the distant church and smiled. Suyun had already decided what to do next. Since the Holy Sun had appeared in his dream, he might as well use the Holy Sun as a starting point. Chapter 403 Judgment Day. After a moment's contemplation, he quickly devised a plan. Inside the church, Pope Joseph, taking advantage of the remaining time before the meeting began, was alone in the prayer room. He stared blankly at the statue of the crucifixion of the Holy Sun, murmuring, "Lord, when will you descend?" He prayed silently. While he was praying devoutly, and outside the church, women mocked men, and people bustled about the Vatican, many tourists taking photos. A sudden change occurred thousands of meters above the Vatican. A dazzling light appeared, followed by a magnificent building that instantly radiated immense light. At that moment, the entire Vatican, no, the entire Europe. Under the illumination of the light, countless people from over 40 countries all stared in astonishment, looking up at the sky. Suddenly, a vast expanse of white mist appeared thousands of meters above the sky, and supported by this mist, a gigantic, white, sacred gate, hundreds of meters in size, materialized and stood there. Endless light radiated from the white gate, and the clouds and other objects nearby seemed to yield to the blazing light. In an instant, the sky cleared, turning a deep azure, and the mist and the giant gate became incredibly conspicuous. The light illuminated all of Europe. "Oh my God, what is this?" Exclamations rang out as nearly 800 million people across Europe stared wide-eyed at the sight of this extraordinary phenomenon. That direction. Soon, those with knowledge quickly pinpointed the exact location of the radiant gate. Above the Vatican. Staring in stunned silence at the colossal gate radiating a soft, non-glaring white light overhead, people were speechless. What was this? A burly man with a full beard nudged his buddy beside him and murmured, "Hey buddy, am I dreaming?" "Yeah, I think I'm dreaming too," the other man replied. As countless people gazed in awe at the giant gate, suddenly the hundreds of meters high gate slightly opened, a crack appearing. In an instant, even more dazzling rays of light appeared, then converged into a pillar of light that pierced down, directly aimed at St. Peter's Basilica. Seeing this pillar of light thousands of meters long, screams erupted. "Dad, look! It must be God appearing." A boy not far from the basilica jumped up excitedly, shouting. This sacred vision perfectly matched his fantasy. He felt it must be God appearing. Robert paused, then, after his son's reminder, suddenly realized something. "This is the gate to heaven," he exclaimed. The colossal gate appeared sacred, and a beam of light shone precisely on St. Peter's Basilica. This scene seemed to have only one explanation. Robert's shout instantly reached the ears of those nearby, followed by gasps of astonishment. "Heaven, there really is a heaven, my God." People who had been wondering why God hadn't yet performed a miracle now had eyes filled with shock and fervor. Lillian, listening to the gasps around her, looked bewildered. God has appeared, how could this be? Incredulity mingled with a trembling in her heart. She had just uttered blasphemous remarks about God, could it be? Lillian shuddered. While all of Europe was in a state of shock, as time passed, the news spread rapidly throughout the world. Instantly, the world was in an uproar. God, always synonymous with omniscience and omnipotence, truly existed. This was an omniscient and omnipotent God. Thinking of this being, People felt both anticipation and trembling. Just as people were experiencing these complex emotions, inside St. Peter's Basilica, Pope Joseph, who had been praying in the chapel, noticed something amiss when the gates of heaven appeared in the sky. Because the light streaming down from the sky seeped into the prayer room. Just as he was about to call for help in surprise, a sudden change occurred to the crucifixion of the Holy Son before him, causing him to stop in his tracks. The cross and the statue of the Holy Son above it instantly emitted rays of holy light. "My Lord," without hesitation, Saint Joseph exclaimed. "What is this? Has the Holy Son manifested?" As he was still reeling from the sight, the light on the crucifixion suddenly coalesced in front of the statue. Then, a blurry figure emerged, becoming clearer. This figure radiated a dense white light, with a halo behind its head. Looking at the gradually clearing figure, Saint Joseph trembled. "The Holy Son," he uttered incredulously. The figure's appearance perfectly matched the surviving portraits of the Holy Son. Most importantly, in this place, combined with this appearance, he already knew the answer. After he spoke, a gentle gaze fell upon him, and a voice as serene as flowing water rang out. "Judgment Day will come soon." Pope Joseph, who had been stunned by the appearance of the Son of God, suddenly snapped back to reality. "What? Judgment Day?" His face changed. No one knew better than him what Judgment Day meant. Judgment Day represented the end times, described in the book of Revelation. Before the end of the world, God and the Son of God would judge humanity. This was the last judgment. Those who believed in God and the Son of God and did good would ascend to heaven, while those who could not be saved would be thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur and perish forever. Pope Joseph's face changed drastically. He couldn't believe Judgment Day would come so soon. Everything was perfectly normal now, so why was the end of the world about to arrive? Just as he was filled with confusion, a voice like flowing water continued to resound. "The end times are coming, but all of this should not have happened. External factors have brought about the end of the world." As he spoke, a look of pity suddenly appeared on the Son of God's radiant face, as if he were plunged into deep sorrow. "Holy Son, what's wrong?" Saint Joseph stared at his son's expression, panicking before he could even think. For some reason, the son's demeanor gave him a bad feeling, as if something terrible was about to happen. This matter might even concern the son. Had the son foreseen something? Chapter 404 The Pope's Bad Premonition. Faced with this sudden sorrow on the face of the Holy Son, Pope Joseph pondered deeply. He didn't know why, but he sensed something terrible might happen, perhaps even concerning the Holy Son. But what could it be? And how could it be related to the Holy Son? Joseph thought for a long time, still unable to understand what was going to happen. Unable to grasp this, he couldn't help but recall the Holy Son's earlier words. "The end of the world is coming, but none of this should have happened. External factors have brought about the end of the world." After processing these two sentences in his mind, his expression changed. In other words, there shouldn't have been an end of the world, other factors had caused it to happen. What were these factors? The demon thought, and he felt a headache coming on, until the phantom of the Holy Son spoke his last words, startling him awake. "What shouldn't happen, I will stop. What you want, I will give you." A voice as clear as water rang out. Then, the Holy Son's figure blurred and quickly disappeared into the air. "Lord, don't go," Pope Joseph cried out involuntarily upon seeing this. Unfortunately, his voice couldn't stop the Son of God from leaving. Before he could finish speaking, that holy and serene figure vanished into thin air. Pope Joseph turned around in alarm, looking around, but couldn't find the figure he was looking for. He was filled with disappointment. Pope. Just then, a knock sounded outside the prayer room door. It was a guard's voice. Saint Joseph composed himself and called out, "What is it, Pope?" "Outside, there's a miracle outside," a guard cried out in a panic. "What did you say?" Pope Joseph was taken aback and quickly ran to open the door. As soon as he opened the door, he saw several burly guards pacing anxiously outside. "Pope, I don't know how to explain this. Please come with me," the lead guard said hurriedly. With that, he took the lead and ran ahead. Pope Joseph followed, puzzled. After a while, the guards escorted the Pope outside. The captain of the guard looked up at the sky, then was stunned. "It's gone. The gates of heaven have disappeared." The other guards were also in a panic. "How could this be?" Pope Joseph, after calming down, said with great authority, "What happened? It's like this." The captain of the guard quickly explained the situation in detail. After a long while, Pope Joseph murmured in a daze, "The gates of heaven." As he spoke, he suddenly understood. It must be the Holy Sun descending from heaven that caused this strange phenomenon. Then, he suddenly remembered something important. The Holy Sun had specially descended from heaven to deliver a message, which was obviously not without reason. The end of the world was really going to happen. Thinking of this, he could no longer sit still. Just then, several shouts suddenly rang out not far away. Pope Joseph turned his head and saw 3 bishops, their expressions extremely excited, as if they had seen the truth. Pope Joseph understood their reaction. He hadn't been much better off than them before. Pope, did you see that? A miracle. A miracle has descended from heaven. A bishop named George, a bearded man in his 40s, pointed excitedly at the sky. The other 2 bishops were also shouting various things. Pope Joseph said, "Yes, I know and understand you." As he spoke, he looked up at the sky, knowing in his heart that the miracle probably wouldn't happen again anytime soon. So, he turned and walked towards the interior of the church, saying, "Come with me, I have something to discuss with you." George looked puzzled. "Pope, shouldn't we be standing here hoping for another miracle? What could be more important than a miracle?" Clearly, he didn't understand why the Pope was still so calm when a miracle had already occurred. Why not wait here for what might happen again? Perhaps the Lord would send another miracle in the next moment, and if they left, wouldn't they miss it? This thought wasn't just on George's mind. The other 2 bishops shared the same idea and were reluctant to leave. Pope Joseph, upon hearing this, looked somewhat worried and explained, "The Holy Sun has just descended." The bishops and guards were stunned, and after understanding what the Pope meant, they exclaimed in surprise, outside the church. After the gates of heaven in the sky disappeared, the crowd began to murmur. What happened? It disappeared. Tourists who were filming this supernatural scene with their phones, or even live streaming it, were all astonished. A burly man murmured, "The gates of heaven appeared above the Vatican, and the light even shone on St. Peter's Basilica. Perhaps there are clues inside St. Peter's Basilica." Before he finished speaking, everyone around him realized. You're right. In a moment of realization, everyone looked in the direction of St. Peter's Basilica, their eyes burning with fervor. Without saying a word, with a roar, the crowd rushed towards St. Peter's Basilica, wanting to see what had been discovered inside, perhaps finding some clues, and if they were lucky, even receiving God's blessing. Thinking of this, their eyes burned even brighter. Aside from those in the Vatican, people all over Europe, no, all over the world, who witnessed this strange phenomenon shared a similar feeling, an urgent desire to fly to the Vatican immediately to see for themselves. Every country, especially the top powers, dispatched personnel to the Vatican, hoping to uncover the secrets behind the miracle. Meanwhile, in addition to these humans, 5 gray-skinned humanoid beings also noticed what was happening in the Vatican. In a dense forest, birdsong and insect chirps filled the air with vibrant life. 5 small gray beings dressed in black jumpsuits, holding an object that occasionally flashed with light, were examining something. After the anomaly in the Vatican, their auxiliary system immediately sent them a message. "We should go there. It must be the work of outsiders," a 1.4-meter tall gray being asserted. "Let's go investigate," a 2-meter tall gray being nodded in agreement. Soon, the 5 of them put away their equipment and headed towards where their aircraft was parked. In a brightly lit meeting room, there was an oval white table and rows of white chairs. 4 people in papal robes were seated in the chairs. "Pope, you mean, you saw the Son of God?" George asked St. Joseph, his mouth agape. "The Son of God also made a prophecy," he said hesitantly. Pope St. Joseph nodded in confirmation. Chapter 405 The Holy Son's Prophecy of Doom. In an instant, all 3 bishops present took a deep breath, their hearts pounding with excitement. "What prophecy did the Holy Son make?" asked another bishop, Denny, who appeared to be in his 50s but had a full head of white hair. Pope Joseph, upon hearing this, said gravely, "Judgment Day is coming." "Pope, what did you say?" The 3 bishops were horrified, their hearts trembling. They knew all too well what Judgment Day represented. It was the end of the world. How could this be? They couldn't believe it. Pope Joseph slowly spoke his suspicions. "I suspect that evil is approaching," the Holy Son said, after he explained the external factors mentioned by the Holy Son that led to the end of the world. The 3 bishops were filled with astonishment and doubt. What were these external factors? "Pope, what should we do?" asked the last bishop, a man in his 30s named Michael, somewhat panicked. The end of the world. Normally, even if these words came from the Pope, they would think he had gone mad. But after the previous miracle at the gates of heaven, They readily believed the Pope's words. This must be true, the end of the world will come. This is a prophecy made by the Holy Son, it will surely happen. Pope Joseph was very anxious, but upon hearing this, he thought of a solution. As he thought, his expression became dazed, and he couldn't help but recall the last words the Holy Son spoke before he left. His gentle voice echoed in his mind, "What shouldn't happen, I will stop, what you want, I will give you, the Holy Son will stop the disaster." Joseph was overjoyed, but then, the last sentence made him uneasy again. Coupled with the Holy Son's expression earlier, his unease deepened, he felt that something he didn't want to see would happen. "Pope, what's wrong?" George shook him, puzzled. "Nothing." Joseph came back to his senses. "I must be overthinking it." Temporarily ignoring his unease, he said to George, "The Holy Son might descend." George and the other two were stunned, looking at the Pope in astonishment. "The Holy Son made a prophecy, he will stop this disaster," Pope Joseph said solemnly. George and his two companions were both surprised and delighted. Upon hearing that the Son of God might be coming, their unease vanished, replaced by an unprecedented sense of security. "Lord," they prayed sincerely. After a while, when they stopped praying, George asked, "Pope, what should we do now?" Knowing about the end of the world, he didn't know what to do next. Pope Joseph thought for a moment, then said solemnly, "The Son of God promised to help us, but we cannot let him face this alone. The end of the world determines the fate of all humanity. We have no right to hide this, it should be left to humanity to solve together." "Pope, you should tell others about this," they asked in surprise. "Won't some people not believe it?" George was worried. Pope Joseph said, "We don't know what the external cause is. This matter requires the help of others. Only by finding that external cause can we find a solution." The three bishops thought about it and all agreed that the Pope was right. The external cause prophesied by the Son of God could only be resolved by finding it. The weakened papacy alone was powerless to help. They nodded, agreeing with the Pope's decision. The Pope acted swiftly, logging into his Twitter account and posting about the event, even translating it into multiple languages to provide a detailed understanding. However, to be cautious, he didn't share the message that the Son of God would prevent the disaster. He feared revealing the nature of the external cause might be detrimental to the Son. The post immediately caused a huge uproar online. People on their way to the Vatican were utterly bewildered. Look at what it said. Judgment Day, Doomsday, an evil external cause has appeared, the world will face its end. At first glance, netizens from various countries thought the Pope's account had been hacked, hence these absurd statements. Some concerned netizens even contacted the Vatican to inquire about the situation. The answer surprised netizens. It wasn't a hacked account, it was a message personally posted by His Holiness the Pope. God above, has the Pope gone mad? The world will end soon. Exactly, I also think something's wrong. Everything's fine, how could it be the end of the world? Most people didn't believe it, even though it was posted by the Pope himself, they just thought he was crazy. Some unbelievers even mocked him, thinking the church had gone mad trying to increase its influence, otherwise why would they come up with something like an apocalypse? Sarcastic comments appeared online. This isn't the Middle Ages anymore, I don't know what's wrong with the Pope, he's probably really crazy. Pope Joseph hadn't expected so many people to disbelieve and mock him so much after just one tweet. He scrolled through the screen, seeing 8 out of 10 comments expressing disbelief and sarcasm, and felt a chill. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, he posted another tweet, stating that the end of the world was a prophecy made by the Messiah. The moment the tweet was posted, the sarcastic comments paused, followed by a surge of disbelief. The appearance of the Son of God reduced the disbelief by half, as people couldn't believe the Pope would link a lie to the Son of God. People began to seriously consider the matter, and some astute netizens connected it to the recent miracle of the gates of heaven. This connection shocked netizens worldwide. Sigh, is it really true? Is there really an apocalypse? How could it suddenly be the end of the world? What happened? Netizens were filled with doubt. Besides netizens, high-ranking officials from various countries quickly contacted the Vatican to inquire about the accuracy of the Pope's information. After the Pope repeatedly confirmed that this was indeed a prophecy from the Son of God, the Messiah, the nations were stunned. High-ranking officials remained calm for a while. Even with a prior miracle, they were still skeptical, even secretly questioning the Vatican's motives. Of course, despite their doubts, they investigated the external factors mentioned by the Pope. Better safe than sorry, they dared not gamble with their lives. Think tanks from various countries racked their brains, calculating what could have caused the apocalypse in the seemingly peaceful world. Some even suggested the Pope pray for a new prophecy. On a flying vehicle, 5 little greys were leisurely chatting and laughing. Suddenly, a message from the auxiliary system filled them with astonishment. Thank you 120,915,092,321,354 for the 3,000 coin donation. Thank you Key for the 788 coin donation. Thank you Black Cat in the Rain for the 500 coin donation. Thank you July Rain for the 100 coin donation. Thank you White Crane for the 100 coin donation. Thank you for the donations. Sorry for the late update today. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 406 The Little Greys Surprised by the Prophecy. Upon hearing the latest news, the 5 greys initially paid little attention, but as the auxiliary system slowly explained, their faces filled with astonishment. The 2-meter-tall grey, Nal, who led the group and prophesied the doomsday prophecy of the Messiah, immediately exclaimed, "How is this possible?" He felt his thoughts were in disarray. They had only just made a decision to destroy the world, and so little time had passed, yet a so-called prophecy had already appeared. If it were inaccurate, it wouldn't be so bad, but the prophecy circulating among humans was far too accurate. Look, what external factors would lead to the world's end? It was practically a direct statement. Because of them, the world would face its end. Why was this happening? Why was it so accurate? This news made the greys a little panicked. "Who is this Messiah?" asked a 1.5-meter-tall grey named Doll, with a beautiful and elegant face. He felt the key was definitely in this Messiah. His words seemed to remind the other greys, and they quickly instructed the auxiliary system to search for information about the Messiah. Within seconds, information about the Messiah resounded in the ears of the 5. The Holy Son Messiah, the Savior, the all-knowing and all-powerful Son of God, the Trinity. As they deciphered the information, they grew increasingly bewildered. A God claiming to be an all-knowing and all-powerful creator God, the Messiah was his only son, or perhaps a different part of that God. "What is this?" Nar asked, his face full of doubt, his first reaction being disbelief. The other greys didn't believe it either. As advanced civilizations, they didn't believe in any so-called creator God, let alone a human God. How ignorant. "These humans are truly foolish," a grey named Ike scoffed. Did these earthlings really understand what omniscience and omnipotence meant? Regardless of how they fabricated the prophecy, it had absolutely nothing to do with God. It was definitely humans playing tricks. "Is it possible it's not a prophecy?" the elegant Doll asked suspiciously. "Could it be that our actions were discovered by those outsiders?" His words sent a jolt of disbelief through the other greys. However, upon closer reflection, they realized that this was indeed the most likely possibility compared to fictional gods. "It seems that the technology of those outsiders shouldn't be underestimated," Nar said, becoming somewhat wary. The other 4 greys nodded in agreement. They were convinced that it was definitely the technology of those outsiders that had detected it. Of course, there was also the possibility that someone among the greys had leaked the information, but they didn't believe it and didn't think anyone would betray them. "That outsider cares so much about humanity, then let's go to the Vatican and see if we can force him out," a strong grey named Kiru said menacingly. Okay, this suggestion was unanimously agreed upon by the other greys, and each of them wore a bloody and cruel smile. During this time, after analyzing the situation for a long time, the think tanks of various countries deduced several possibilities based on the current situation. Compared to Earth, humanity was far too fragile, and eliminating them wouldn't be too difficult. Whether it was a meteorite, a solar flare, a deterioration of the Earth's environment, or a virus, there were simply too many reasons. However, since the Holy Son had mentioned external factors, a large number of people also turned their attention to outer space. Besides observing changes in the Sun, the most closely watched phenomena were the trajectories of various asteroids, attempting to deduce which meteorite was most likely to impact Earth. In this process, almost all relatively large asteroids were marked, including the one in nearly 100 kilometers in size. However, despite its size, its trajectory was unlikely to be towards Earth, so humanity paid it little attention, completely ignoring it and focusing their attention on other asteroids. During this time, at the request of high-ranking officials in various countries, Pope Joseph was also persuaded to try to contact God and request new prophecies. Unfortunately, no matter how much Joseph prayed, he failed to connect with God, ending in failure. Besides these events, after Pope Joseph announced the end of the world, although most people didn't mock him because of the connection to the Son of God, they also didn't believe the prophecy. They adopted a spectator mentality, feeling that the disaster wouldn't affect them, and watched with amusement. Of course, while some didn't believe, others did, even if only a small minority did. Some people are using the doomsday prophecy for personal gain, while others are committing crimes. Crime rates worldwide are rising sharply. If most people weren't skeptical and adopting a wait-and-see attitude, the situation would likely be even worse. Under these circumstances, high-ranking officials in various countries naturally complained, deeming the Pope's actions inappropriate. In St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican, St. Joseph answered yet another phone call, his face showing helplessness. An aged voice came from the other end of the line. "Your Majesty, why didn't you tell us about this before releasing the news?" The voice on the other end was full of frustration and complaint. If they had been told quietly, there wouldn't have been such chaos. Perhaps people would still be living happily, and there wouldn't be any chaos. Pope St. Joseph, however, disagreed. He believed that in the face of the apocalypse, everyone has the right to know their fate, a right he could not deny. Moreover, even if it wasn't said now, the apocalypse would eventually be known. Unlike the high-ranking officials of various countries who still harbored doubts, he was absolutely certain that disaster would strike. He felt it was good to give the public time to adjust, so that when the disaster truly arrived, people would be mentally prepared and the situation wouldn't be too bad. Pope Joseph thought the same thing, and a sigh escaped his lips from the other end of the line. An aged voice said, "Alice, it's too late to say anything more, it's already beyond our control," unless His Holiness the Pope was willing to clarify that it was a joke, but after the Pope's use of the Holy Son, no one had held on to that hope. "Pope," the person on the other end of the phone was about to say something. But before he could finish, a cry of alarm suddenly rang out. "Pope, something terrible has happened. Come and see." A guard rushed in, shouting anxiously. "Why are you in such a panic?" St. Joseph instinctively scolded, then suddenly realized something, his face filled with surprise, and said, "Could it be another miracle?" No, it's a UFO, the burly guard stammered. Chapter 407 The little Greys arrive in the Vatican. Pope Joseph's expression froze, incredulous, wondering if he had misheard. "A UFO, outside," a guard urgently pointed outside. Pope Joseph, no longer able to answer the phone, quickly put it down and ran outside with a guard, leaving the other end still saying hello, hello, hello. Outside St. Peter's Basilica, everyone stared blankly at the sky, their faces filled with shock. Several hundred meters above the basilica, a silver, disc-shaped object floated. This disc-shaped object appeared to be over 20 meters in size, as large as a building, incredibly enormous. Most importantly, there was no visible jet propeller or anything like that on its surface, it was simply floating in mid-air. With current human technology, it was absolutely impossible to create such a thing. Moreover, its appearance already told everyone what it was. A UFO. An alien UFO. People gasped in astonishment. Just then, Pope Joseph, surrounded by about 20 guards, rushed out of the basilica. The first thing he saw when he looked up was also shocking. The unidentified flying object, which they had only heard about vaguely in daily life, had actually appeared, and openly at the sight of everyone. What did it want? Seeing the UFO, Pope St. Joseph was not excited, but rather somewhat frightened, a bad premonition creeping into his heart. And where was it? It appeared in the Vatican, right above the cathedral. Just as he was inwardly lamenting the impending doom, the UFO in the sky also made a strange movement. Suddenly, it wobbled, and in about 2 seconds, it went from hundreds of meters in the air to hovering only 7 or 8 meters above the ground. The entire movement was completely sudden, without any acceleration. The hovering was abrupt and utterly terrifying. "Ah!" Screams rang out as a strong gust of wind swept through, making it almost impossible for those below to open their eyes. After the wind subsided, everyone saw the bottom of the UFO suddenly open. Then, a gray humanoid creature wearing a black bodysuit slowly descended from the open passage. This method of floating and descending left everyone stunned. As 5 large-headed, black-eyed gray beings descended one after another, the crowd, After a few seconds of silence, suddenly erupted in screams. "My God, run, help!" Hundreds of men and women near the church turned and tried to flee without a word. Unfortunately, before they could take more than a few steps, the flying saucer emitted a slight noise, then everyone who was running froze, and to their horror, they discovered they couldn't move. "These people are so annoying," the elegant doll asked. "That's how inferior beings are," the strong Gil sneered. "Let's just wipe them all out." 5 small gray beings landed on the ground. Although their voices were strange, they were still understandable, and those who heard them looked terrified. "Without these stupid creatures as witnesses, it wouldn't be interesting," the leader, Nar, laughed. "Nar, you're right," Gil thought for a moment and agreed. Indeed, without the participation of these hundreds of inferior beings, it would be quite boring. Moreover, they hadn't intended for it to be monotonous from the start. Since these lower beings were destined for destruction soon, their exposure didn't matter. Telling them the truth before they died, and then watching them struggle and display their various ugly behaviors, would be incredibly entertaining. This was a real-life drama, and they wouldn't miss such a spectacular scene. After thinking it through, they began to act according to their original plan, the auxiliary system rapidly infiltrating. Soon, people all over the world, doing various things, suddenly froze. Whether it was a mobile phone, a computer, or an advertising screen on the street, any device with a signal screen suddenly changed its display, playing strange images. The scene shifted, and a magnificent building came into view, seemingly a church. Of course, that wasn't the most surprising thing. What caught their attention most were the several strange gray figures and hundreds of motionless people appearing on the screen. The viewers initially wondered if their devices were infected with a virus, then their attention was drawn to the screen. "Aliens, hey, what new movie is this? It's so realistic." Hundreds of millions of viewers were amazed by the scene, their first thought being the realism of the visuals. Besides the exceptionally clear visuals, the expressions of terror on the frozen faces were remarkably lifelike. The 5 aliens, in particular, were even more striking. Not only did they appear incredibly realistic, but their movements were fluid and graceful, a truly pleasing sight. Of course, the flying saucer 7 or 8 meters above the ground also amazed them, exuding a sense of advanced technology. Just as the audience was marveling, a somewhat frightened, aged voice rang out. "Who are you aliens?" With the aged voice, the scene shifted. Surrounded by more than 20 burly soldiers, an elderly man in a pristine white robe spoke with a terrified expression. The appearance of this old man instantly stunned the audience. With the emergence of the Doomsday Prophecy, Pope St. Joseph had become a global celebrity, widely known, with almost 60% of people recognizing him. Even those who didn't quickly understood his identity with explanations from others. His Holiness the Pope, St. Joseph. After recognizing him, people were puzzled, wondering why this Pope was on screen. And the alien the Pope mentioned, could it be? Of course, there was another strange thing that belatedly instilled fear in the audience. They discovered that although Pope St. Joseph's voice was the same, the words he spoke were in their native dialect. This immediately made the intelligent ones pale, sensing something was wrong. Just then, one of the 5 little grays being questioned by the Pope spoke. The 2-meter-tall now laughed loudly. "Who are we?" "We are your masters." "What are you saying?" Pope St. Joseph's expression changed. "Still don't understand." Nell was taken aback, then said mockingly, "Then I'll tell you the truth, you foolish humans, you are all our captives. In your words, this earth is our zoo, and you are the animals in the zoo." "Ha ha ha!" The 5 little grays couldn't help but laugh. Nar's words, simultaneously translated by the auxiliary system, were transmitted from devices around the world, and everyone clearly understood them. After he finished speaking, the world fell silent. Chapter 408 The Terrified World. The audience's hearts pounded, filled with disbelief. These 5 gray, humanoid beings were claiming that humans were domesticated by them, and that Earth was a zoo. Was this really not a movie? The viewers were all filled with astonishment. As more and more people watched the scene, scientists among them felt a chill run down their spines. The idea that humans were domesticated by aliens had been raised before, with some finding everything about Earth too coincidental. In the universe, Earth's position is remarkably safe, protected by layers of the solar system. The Kuiper Belt, the Oort cloud, and Jupiter and the Moon envelop Earth, creating a favorable environment for its growth. Even when faced with asteroid impacts, Earth always manages to escape unscathed. But among so many celestial bodies in the universe, why does Earth receive such preferential treatment? Some believe that Earth's favorable environment is not a coincidence, but rather that an extraterrestrial civilization is secretly protecting it, and that Earth's ability to escape disaster each time is due to this protection. Of course, there's also a greater possibility that Earth's environment is a miracle created by nature, and these greys who claim to be breeding humans have simply discovered this place and then implemented their so-called surveillance and breeding. Regardless, the 5 greys in the image are probably telling the truth about breeding. After all, what benefit would they gain from lying? But what is their true purpose? Why expose this fact in front of all humanity? Some scientists researching extraterrestrial civilizations, and other intelligent individuals, felt a chill run down their spines, a bad feeling creeping over them. Just then, the little gray in the image spoke again. Foolish humans. Are you wondering if this is true, and why I'm telling you? Nar laughed, pausing for a few seconds before continuing. Because you will ultimately be destroyed. The world is about to restart. You humans will disappear from this world like a brief burst of light, just like the prophecy that appeared among you humans. The world will face its end. Nar's voice was filled with laughter as he uttered words that determined the fate of nearly 7.8 billion humans, words that sounded incredibly cruel. His voice even fully expressed indifference and a complete lack of pity or compassion. It was as if people were bacteria, their death utterly insignificant to them. Whoosh! When the speculation was confirmed, the audience was stunned, then gripped by fear. The prophecy is true, the world is going to end. How could this be? Whether they were at the Vatican or watching from the sidelines, everyone was discussing the matter in terror. Can anyone tell us this is just a joke? It's April Fool's Day. Some tried to cling to hope, thinking it was just a joke. Until a new image appeared on the screen, silencing them. The camera switched to space, and against a black background, a massive yellow meteorite drifted slowly. This meteorite was enormous. Just seeing it on screen was enough to make people feel suffocated. Could it be? Anyone with a normal IQ would have a terrifying thought upon seeing this asteroid. Foolish humans, you're right. Suddenly, Nar's voice appeared on the screen. He said, before long, this asteroid, which is a full 100 kilometers in your human units of measurement, will strike your Earth. The world will be cleansed, and you humans will be wiped out. After Nar's words, those who had still harbored a glimmer of hope could no longer hold on. A white woman's eyes widened in terror. God, someone tell me this isn't real. A burly man with a thick beard was deathly pale. Screams echoed around the world, and panic and chaos began to unfold. As viewers spread the word, more and more people learned about it. At this moment, at least 6 billion people were watching the screen with bated breath, and the number was rapidly increasing. This event, affecting all of humanity, would likely eventually reach the attention of everyone except a very small minority. Meanwhile, after the asteroid appeared on the screen and Nar announced his plan to destroy the world with a meteorite, the leaders of various countries, shocked, immediately ordered their subordinates to investigate whether the asteroid existed. The answer they received chilled their hearts. There was indeed an asteroid, and its size was roughly the same as the gray man's description, nearly 100 kilometers. If this asteroid were to actually hit Earth, everyone who learned the truth felt a chill of terror. Especially since the asteroid's impact point hadn't been calculated, because according to its trajectory, it clearly couldn't possibly hit Earth. But since the gray man had said it, it certainly wasn't baseless. People were filled with fear, because no one knew where the meteorite would strike. Just then, the asteroid's trajectory suddenly changed, gradually altering its direction. After calculations, researchers got the answer: the asteroid was indeed heading towards Earth. Chaos erupted. In the Vatican, people outside St. Peter's Basilica, watching the clear image projected in the sky, all turned pale. Pope Joseph couldn't hold back any longer, staring at the 5 gray men and demanding, "Why did you do this?" For billions of viewers, the scene switched back. The 5 gray men looked at the Pope. 5 dark eyes stared intently at the figure, enough to instill fear in anyone. At least 20 soldiers caught in the gaze felt their bodies go weak, cold sweat beating on their backs. Pope Joseph maintained a facade of composure. His faith allowed him to maintain a calm demeanor as he looked at the 5 aliens. The most elegant and handsome of them all, Dor, found it amusing. "Why do you say that?" he asked. "This is a testing ground. You humans are just unqualified test subjects. Isn't it normal for you to be destroyed?" he replied, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. His voice was broadcast worldwide, making people grit their teeth in anger. Pope Joseph was furious. The 5 little Greys, seeing his anger, found it amusing. Dor chuckled, "You must be the Pope of the Holy See, right? Guess why we're here." Chapter 409 The People Who Pray. Saint Joseph, his right hand tightly clutching the cross pendant on his chest, felt sweat bead on his forehead upon hearing this. As a pope, he was naturally intelligent and instantly realized the reason. It must be due to the previous miracle. "You've come for the miracle?" Pope Saint Joseph asked. "No, you guessed wrong," the 5 little Greys laughed. To the ears of billions of viewers, only Dal said calmly, "Your apocalyptic prophecy is said to be the work of a human named Messiah. Call him out. We want to see this Messiah." Hearing the word Messiah, the billions of viewers were filled with mixed emotions. Some were surprised and delighted, while others glared angrily at the 5 little Greys. Because the tone of their voice lacked any respect for the Holy Son, it was as if they were speaking to an ordinary human, carrying a condescending and commanding tone. Pope Joseph was also furious. His faith made him ignore his fear, and he resolutely refused, saying, "Your status is not worthy of the descent of the noble son." The word noble seemed to have tickled the 5 little Greys' funny bone. "Ha ha ha," the strong little Grey, Gil, burst into laughter. "As your master, you speak of nobility in front of us." He was both amused and exasperated. It was ridiculous enough that a pretentious outsider was addressed as a god by these humans, let alone speak of nobility in front of them. "You human, it seems you don't realize who stands before you." Gil suddenly stepped forward and walked towards the Pope. Nara and the other 4 watched with amusement. "What do you want to do? Stop!" The 20-odd soldiers guarding the Pope suppressed their fear and shouted warnings. Since Nara and the others did not restrain these soldiers, they tried to retreat while protecting the Pope. "HMPH, Gil snorted coldly, and suddenly stretched out his long, narrow gray hand and slapped it forcefully towards the soldiers. Boom! Then, in the eyes of billions of viewers, a shocking scene appeared. The 20-odd soldiers, as if controlled by telekinesis, were instantly sent flying backward. The soldiers crashed heavily to the ground in the distance, falling in large numbers, leaving only Pope Joseph standing. Pope Joseph instinctively took a step back, looking at him in fear. Superpowers, telekinesis, the soldiers on the ground guessed in fear after recovering. Telekinesis superpowers, Gil, who was walking towards the Pope, couldn't help but laugh upon hearing this. "Ha ha ha. You humans are indeed foolish." As he spoke, he suddenly seemed to realize something, arrogantly saying, "Look, now in your eyes, am I not a god?" The soldiers on the ground were terrified. Some couldn't help themselves and pulled out a black pistol from their waistbands, firing at Gil in terror. Bang 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 bang. Seeing someone fire, billions of people were first startled, then a sense of anticipation arose. Then, after seeing the scene clearly, everyone fell silent. Bullets struck Kiru's bodysuit, but instead of working as expected, they fell to the ground upon impact, completely ineffective. It was as if the bullets were made of water. Even bullets aimed at Kiru's exposed head were stopped shortly by a transparent shield that appeared upon impact. As the bullets fell, the shield disappeared. The other soldiers, terrified, opened fire. Bang! 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 Amidst the hail of bullets, Kiru remained calm, even strolling leisurely towards the Pope. How could this be? The soldiers who had fired were shocked, clutching their empty pistols, at a loss. Seemingly impatient, Kiru floated up, hovering half a meter above the ground, slowly drifting forward, laughing loudly. "Foolish humans. Don't I look like your god now? Hurry up and pay homage to your god. Kneel down and submit to me." Those watching were stunned, shocked by Kiru's actions. The ability to ignore bullets and fly freely filled them with fear, and a wavering began to creep into their hearts. How was this any different from being a god? If this power were in ancient times, wouldn't people consider it divine? Those witnessing the scene felt powerless and desperate. Was the world truly going to be destroyed by the meteorite? Watching the approaching gray, blasphemy. "This is blasphemy," Pope Joseph said angrily as he retreated. "Human, aren't you afraid of death?" Jilu found it amusing, and with a flick of his right hand, Pope Joseph's body floated in the air and drifted towards him. Pope Joseph struggled in the air, but it was all in vain. "You heretic," he roared. "I almost forgot," Jilu realized. Suddenly, in the eyes of billions of viewers, the scene switched to Jilu's face. He roared, "The Holy Son of Mankind, didn't you prophesy? Are you just going to watch humanity perish? Aren't you going to save them? Come on, stop us." He laughed cruelly, threatening, "If you don't come out now, I'll kill this Pope of the papacy." Saint Joseph, defiant, didn't yield and was about to angrily rebuke him. Unfortunately, Kiru sensed his intention and silenced him. Kiru continued laughing, and all of humanity, as he spoke, the scene before billions of viewers shifted, returning to the dark starry sky. A yellow meteorite, nearly 100 kilometers long, suddenly accelerated visibly, hurtling at breakneck speed. The viewers were terrified, placing their hopes on the Holy Sun. "Lord, save us, Holy Sun, please appear, I don't want to die," sob. Amidst terrified cries and countless prayers, people hoped the Holy Sun would appear and save them. Of course, some prayed to the sun god and immortals. In short, people prayed to all sorts of gods, but the most common was for the Holy Sun. The five Greys watched with amusement, their eyes full of mockery. The people's fear pleased them greatly. Some high-ranking officials in various countries could no longer restrain themselves and wanted to use nuclear weapons to bomb the Greys' location. Unfortunately, when they tried to activate the nuclear weapons, they were horrified to find that the activation had failed. Clearly, the Greys already had a countermeasure. Then, at this moment, whether it was billions of ordinary citizens or high-ranking officials who had lost their trump card, all they could do was pray. Pray for the Holy Sun's arrival. After several minutes passed and the Holy Sun still hadn't appeared, despair descended upon the people. Even the Holy Sun didn't want to appear and refused to save them. Chapter 410 The Appearance of the Holy Sun Messiah. Just as people were filled with despair, the five little Greys looked disappointed and disdainful. "I didn't expect this Holy Sun to be so famous. He doesn't even dare to come out and see us." Gil crossed his arms, looking utterly disdainful. The other four little Greys nodded in agreement. Gil's voice reached the ears of billions of people, which was an even greater blow to them, making them even more desperate. However, at this moment, a sound of footsteps rang out in the quiet scene, attracting the attention of the despairing people. This sound also attracted the attention of the five little Greys, who turned their heads to look. A person dressed in a long white robe that reached his feet was slowly walking from a distance. As he got closer, billions of viewers gradually saw his appearance clearly. Long, curly white hair, as pure as white wool, as flawless as snow, without any sin, and red eyes like holy fire, as if constantly baptizing people. His appearance was upright and peaceful, exuding a strange attraction, giving people a sense of intimacy. This strange appearance instantly attracted everyone's attention. The existence of such a person in the world was unbelievable. The sacredness emanating from this person's appearance was particularly astonishing. Of course, while most were bewildered, a small group of believers who had read the book of Revelation stared wide-eyed. This was the appearance of the Son of Man in the last chapter of the Bible, Revelation. Among the 20-odd soldiers lying on the ground, a strong, bearded middle-aged man trembled as he gazed at the holy figure. His voice trembled as he asked the white-clad figure, You are the Son of Man." The Son of Man's words were met with a thunderous boom. Everyone was stunned, then shocked, staring intently at the white-clad figure. With the question of whether he was the Son of Man in mind, although the white-clad figure's unusual appearance differed from their impressions, his aura was very similar. If there truly was a Son of Man, this must be what he looked like. While people were wondering about the appearance, some who knew about Revelation quickly told those around them. They then realized the truth, followed by excitement and trembling. The five Greys, naturally, also heard the soldiers' trembling words, their faces filled with astonishment. At this moment, an aged voice rang out. The Holy Son, Pope Joseph, struggling in the air, looked at the holy figure and couldn't help but wipe away tears. This figure was different from the previous illusions. It was full of realism, clearly the Holy Son's true form. The Holy Son had truly descended. He was filled with excitement. Hearing Pope Joseph's shout, the five Greys' eyes lit up. If it were just a soldier, they wouldn't be sure, but now, with this old human man added, they were basically certain. To confirm, Nar tentatively asked, "Are you the Holy Son, Messiah?" Suyun's physical body walked not far from the five Greys and said, "Yes, I've come." After receiving a definite answer, the five Greys were all astonished. Gil exclaimed in surprise, "You really dared to come? You're not afraid of death? You really dared to show yourself for humanity?" he exclaimed in astonishment. The billions of viewers, who were feeling incredible and excited about the Holy Son's appearance, suddenly tensed up upon hearing this. They also wanted to know why the Holy Son had appeared. The Pope looked at the Holy Son with concern. Hearing this, the Holy Son, with his full head of snow-white hair, looked at the Pope and the others, his expression softening, and spoke softly. Ask, and it will be given to you, seek, and you will find, knock, and it will be opened to you. For everyone who asks will receive, and whoever seeks will find, and whoever knocks will have the door opened. As these words were spoken, the panicked crowd gradually quieted down, staring blankly at the Holy Son on the screen, listening to the holy words in their ears. They understood why the Holy Son had appeared, just as he was saying. They had almost forgotten who the Holy Son was. A white man in his 30s named Sane murmured, in the Holy Son's eyes, aren't we all his children? Just as a son asks his father for bread, how could the father give him a stone? Or ask for a fish and give him a poisonous snake? Even people, though not kind, know to give good things to their children. How much more so would the Holy Son bestow good things upon people? It was because people prayed that the Holy Son descending for their hopes and expectations. At this moment, the audience felt a pang of sadness, and some believers were even in tears, murmuring as they gazed at the Holy Son. Pope Joseph, tears streaming down his face, murmured, "Holy Son." Suddenly, a sneer rang out. Q said, "You foolish humans, your emotions are truly rich." His voice was full of disdain, a contempt for their rich emotions. Ignoring the angry glares from the humans, he asked the Holy Son before him, "I heard you made a prophecy, predicting the end of the world. How did you do that?" The people looked at the little greys with disdain, thinking the aliens were truly ignorant. Wasn't it normal for the Holy Son to make a prophecy? Now, thinking about the prophecy, they couldn't help but marvel at the accuracy of the Holy Son's prediction, marveling at how worthy he was of the title. The 5 little greys waited a while, and when the Holy Son didn't answer, displeasure flashed across their faces. Jilu chuckled angrily, "I know even if you don't tell me." His words drew astonishment not only from the crowd but also from the Holy Son, who looked at them with confusion, wondering what he knew. "Foolish humans. You're still being deceived by this Holy Son? How foolish," Jilu said disdainfully. Billions of viewers stared in astonishment at the little gray man. Jilu raised his long, narrow gray hand and pointed at the Holy Son, asking, "Who's behind you? Are you an outsider or the puppet?" These words only deepened the confusion and uncertainty in the crowd. What outsider? What puppet? Scanning the still confused humans, Jilu burst into laughter. "You humans are truly stupid. Can't you see that this guy called Messiah uses technology to deceive people? Let me guess, are you a survivor from previous generations of humanity or an outsider from outside the testing grounds? Well, did I guess right?" "Haha," he said, his face full of smugness, coldly looking at the Holy Son, as if he knew everything. As soon as he finished speaking, a thunderous roar erupted, and billions of viewers gasped in shock, staring at the Holy Son in disbelief. The Holy Son, an alien from previous generations, was using technology to deceive people. His true identity was either a surviving human from previous generations or simply an alien. The crowd was stunned, looking at the Holy Son in disbelief. "Thank you for the 100 coin reward. Thank you 20200904001419216 feet for the 100 coin reward. Thank you for the 100 coin reward. There will be another update later. I suggest reading it tomorrow. Cap. Chapter 411. You are the Son of God. The first to be unable to accept it was Pope Joseph, who angrily rebuked, "Nonsense. This is blasphemous talk, a desecration." Some of the wavering spectators calmed down slightly upon hearing this. Jilu scoffed, "Look, what difference is there between me and your God right now?" As he spoke, he flew through the air, and with a wave of his right hand, all the soldiers were controlled and floated into the air. This shocking scene silenced the crowd. These humans are really stupid. It's normal. Humans are shallow and don't understand the power of technology. They categorize things that technology can do as miracles. How foolish. These sarcastic remarks came from the Greys and were spread around the world through various devices, chilling people's hearts. Could it be that the Holy Son really is? Their original expectations instantly turned into despair. The 5 Greys smiled broadly, enjoying the humans' expressions. Jilu looked at Messiah, wanting to see what his expression was, but he was disappointed. The Holy Son's expression did not change much. He still looked at the humans with gentleness. Several little gray figures paused, stunned. At that moment, the elegant doll suddenly seemed to remember something, slowly walking to the Holy Son's side, circling him, his gaze fixed on him, and asking, "Are you the Messiah? Are you the Son of God?" In the eyes of billions of viewers, the Holy Son replied, I am. Dole's lips curled into a sneer as he walked, amused. I've heard you can restore sight to the blind and resurrect the dead. Where did you get your abilities? If you can, then show me. The Messiah frowned slightly. After a long while, seeing he still hadn't reacted, Dole looked him up and down, laughing. I see you're not carrying any technological items right now, or is it that without those technological devices, you can't do it? Upon hearing this, billions of viewers felt a tightness in their hearts, filled with disbelief. Could it be that the Holy Son truly relied on the miracles recorded in the technological Bible, all done through technological means? Pope Joseph was also watching the Holy Son, his heart filled with intense anticipation. 10,000 meters in the air, Su Yun stared down, his brow furrowed. Previously, the power of his mortal body had been completely sealed by the Ark of the Covenant, and now he was no different from an ordinary person. Messiah shook his head. Unwilling, Karu sneered beside him. Or is it that you can't do it? Everyone who saw this scene was filled with disappointment. Was the Holy Son just an ordinary person? Holy Son, Pope Joseph opened his mouth. At this moment, Dawa chuckled, unwilling. Is that it? Then what about now? As he spoke, he suddenly hooked his gray finger, and with a cry of alarm, Pope Joseph was pulled over. Ah! Then a scream came. 2 bursts of blood erupted from Pope Joseph's eyes. His eyes had been crushed out of thin air. At the same time, a bracelet on Dore's wrist flashed, and a laser beam swept past. Ah! A bloody hole the size of a wrist appeared in his abdomen. The excruciating pain attacked Pope Joseph, and he clutched his bloodied stomach and eyes, his body convulsing. Dore flung his hand, and he was slammed hard to the ground. Messiah's expression changed. She rushed over and knelt down, looking at Pope Joseph with worry. The audience screamed in terror, and the faithful of the papacy prayed in fear. The soldiers tried to rush forward, but were restrained and could only roar angrily. The 5 little grays all laughed. There was no sympathy in their laughter, they seemed to be watching a good show. Pope Joseph groaned in pain, his body covered in blood, looking utterly miserable. Messiah reached out and grabbed the Pope's arm. How are you? Feeling the Holy Son's approach and hearing his worried voice, the barely breathing Pope Joseph immediately suppressed his pain and weakly said, Holy Son, you must leave here. His tone was full of worry for the Holy Son, ignoring his own injuries. Am I going to that paradise? He asked, dazed. Even at this moment, Pope Joseph did not doubt the Holy Son's identity. He believed in the existence of God and the Son of Man. The old man's words astonished the 5 grays nearby, who scoffed at the human's foolishness, still believing in a false God. Pope Joseph weakly pushed, trying to get his son away. Suddenly, a gentle voice rang out beside him. You'll be alright. Billions of spectators and the 5 grays watched as the Son of Man reached out and gently pulled away the Pope's trembling hand, which was clutching his wound. What is he doing? The 5 grays wondered. Messiah gently released his hand, seemingly unconcerned about the blood, and placed it directly on the bloodied abdomen and the bloodshot eyes. Within the empty body, a golden thread appeared, connecting to the divine realm, drawing healing power from that vast strength. Colorless light emanated from his hand, sweeping across the bloodied wound. He released his hand. Pope Joseph felt incredibly comfortable as the Son of Man's hand touched his wound. Even the excruciating pain seemed to vanish in the blink of an eye. As the hand covering his eyes was removed, the white light reappeared in his vision. My eyes, his vision returned, and everything around him was so clear. He saw the 2 hands stained with his blood, he saw the white-haired, red-eyed Holy Son looking at him with concern, and he saw other things as well. His previously blurred vision became clear again. He felt he had never seen so clearly before. He knew his eyes were healed. His destroyed eyes had been restored after the Holy Son's hand had touched them. And then, he touched his abdomen. Pope St. Joseph stared blankly at the Holy Son, backlit by the light, as if looking into everything within his own heart. Lord, he murmured, Father in heaven, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. The kingdom, the power, and the glory are yours, now and forever. As the voice of Pope Joseph echoed, the people snapped out of their daze. They stared in astonishment at the healed Pope. His destroyed eyes and the bloody hole in his abdomen were now completely intact. Chapter 412 Faith Brings Healing. God, incredible! After a moment of shock, a believer exclaimed with certainty. The Son, he is definitely the Son, Someone nearby asked curiously. A believer named Gary explained, "The Bible records that anyone who touches the sun with faith will be healed. There was once a woman who suffered from a bleeding disorder for over 10 years. She believed that touching the sun would cure her. When she touched the sun's clothes, the source of her bleeding immediately dried, and she was cured. This is the power of the Lord, it's true, he must be the sun," another believer named Jimmy, a 40-year-old, exclaimed excitedly. The Pope was healed by the sun's touch. This was a miracle. Even the alien said the sun wasn't wearing any technology. It definitely wasn't technology, Jimmy shouted. These words instantly reminded billions of viewers, rekindling hope in their despair. The words also reached the ears of the Greys. They stared at the sun in shock, recovering from their astonishment. "How did you do that?" Dal looked at the holy sun suspiciously, scrutinizing him from head to toe, but still couldn't find any equipment. Even a clandestine scan with his own equipment failed to detect any technological items. This holy sun, really using his own power? How could that be possible? Healing always takes time, right? He had crushed that human's eyes and pierced his abdomen, and the holy sun had simply touched it, and the wounds had disappeared without a trace. Even with his experience, he was utterly astonished. If it weren't for the holes in his clothes and the bloodstains, he would have doubted whether his previous experience was real. "Where did you get your ability?" Dal asked warily. "Are you hiding any technological items on you?" Messiah, seeing that the Pope was alright, stood up and faced the 5 little Greys, saying, "This is an ability I received from my father." "Father?" The 5 little Greys were slightly taken aback, then realized who the Holy Sun's father was. The Almighty Heavenly Father, and the others looked strange, their eyes filled with disbelief. Even though this Holy Sun had done things that seemed unbelievable to them before, they still felt that he must have used some kind of technology they didn't know about. He didn't believe in any so-called Heavenly Father or God. How could there be a God in the world? That was his excuse. "Don't think we'll believe you," Dal sneered. However, despite saying that, they were still somewhat wary of the Holy Sun's methods, wondering if he had other strange abilities. But they wouldn't give up without testing him. The 5 exchanged glances, and Kiru, one of them, nodded slightly. He suddenly raised his hand and waved it towards the Holy Sun. Under the watchful eyes of countless people, the Holy Sun's body seemed to have been attacked, and he was thrown back violently. People screamed. "Holy Sun!" Pope Joseph exclaimed in horror. Messiah fell heavily to the ground. Cough, cough, cough. He coughed as he propped himself up. His pure white clothes were stained with dust, and even his snow-white hair, as clean and without sin, was now covered in dust. His once sacred image seemed to have fallen to the mortal realm. The 5 Greys were stunned for a moment, then burst into laughter. "Ha ha ha," Jilru sneered, "aren't you the son of God? Where's your power? As fragile as an ordinary person, ha ha ha." His voice was full of mockery, as if he had discovered some truth. People glared angrily, yet also looked at the Holy Sun with worry. "You've made us worry for so long," Jilru breathed a sigh of relief, saying, "If this is all you've got, then don't blame me." With that, he raised his hand, and the Holy Sun's entire body was controlled to fly half a meter into the air. "Tell me, where did you get your power? Who's behind you?" Jilru demanded sharply, then tightened his grip. An invisible force began to slowly tighten under his gesture. The Holy Sun. Billions of viewers watched as pain appeared on that peaceful face as the force tightened. Holy Sun, despair filled the hearts of the people. Messiah, feeling his powerless body, looked up and cried out, "Protect me, Father." The Greys were about to laugh when they froze. A great power appeared, an invisible force rapidly enveloping him. To outsiders, the Holy Sun merely uttered a cry before slowly landing, the surrounding binding force seemingly vanishing. "What did you do?" The 5 Greys were terrified. The unknown was the most frightening. After landing, Messiah said in a deep voice, "Leave this place. This world doesn't belong to you. Leave, it doesn't belong to you." The 5 Greys laughed angrily. "This world is our testing ground, and you humans are all our test subjects. You humans are no longer qualified and should be eliminated." His words caused an uproar among billions of viewers, everyone glaring at them. The 5 Greys didn't care what humans were thinking. Even if they resisted, it would be a futile struggle against such overwhelming technological power. However, this Holy Sun was extremely strange. His abilities were unfathomable, filling them with apprehension. Suddenly, the elegant Dal seemed to realize something, his eyes lighting up slightly, then filing with excitement. He deduced the weakness of the Holy Sun before him from historical records. A legendary saint would be much easier to deal with. He suddenly pointed to the people around him. See these hundreds of humans here? Messiah frowned slightly. If you don't want them to die, you'd better not resist. Dal smiled sinisterly. I have the ability to kill them in an instant. For every instance of resistance, we'll kill one. The four little greys beside him looked surprised, then suddenly understood, looking at Dal with admiration. Billions of viewers heard this clearly, and all showed expressions of anger. Through the screen, angry voices rang out. Don't listen to him, Holy Son, don't believe him. They were indignant, secretly cursing the little greys for their despicable behavior. The hundreds of hostages outside St. Peter's Basilica had constantly changing expressions. Unlike the detached viewers, they were filled with fear in addition to anger, looking at the Holy Son with dread. Not one of them wanted to die. Faced with a choice of life and death, almost all of them uncontrollably sided with themselves. Son of God, leave us alone, Pope Joseph shouted angrily. That's right, don't fall for these guys' tricks because of us. Besides the Pope, a few devout voices rang out among the hundreds of people. However, their numbers were far too small, less than 10 in total. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 413 Sacrifice. Dol wasn't about to let them cause trouble. Pointing at most of the others, he shouted, see their expressions, if you dare resist, they will die because of you. As he spoke, a light suddenly flashed on the flying saucer 7 or 8 meters in the air. Then, hundreds of people felt as if they were being crushed, and screams rang out one after another. However, this feeling came and went quickly, and they recovered in a short while. However, the flying saucer flashing above their heads was still a reminder that what these little greys said was true, and they did indeed have the ability to kill them in an instant. If the Holy Son really resisted, they really would die. In an instant, fear appeared on everyone's face, and cries of pain filled the air. See their expressions, Dol smiled. In the eyes of billions of viewers, the Holy Son Messiah looked around at the people. Pope Joseph's heart skipped a beat, and he had a bad feeling. Sure enough, the next second, Gil, one of the 5 little greys, couldn't hold back anymore. Suddenly, he raised his hand and waved it, and the Holy Son was thrown away. Thump, he crashed heavily to the ground, his body curling up. The Holy Son, Lord, the 5 greys' eyes lit up, and they all burst into laughter. Ha ha ha, Jilu, as if he'd received a toy, started playing with it. Under the watchful eyes of countless people, the white figure crashed to the ground again, accompanied by violent coughing. Aren't you the Son of God? Where's your power? Ha ha ha, Jilu laughed mockingly, his heart filled with smugness. The 4 greys beside him were also thrilled. Thump, Messiah slammed against the wall, rolled a few times after falling, his snow-white clothes and white hair now stained, no longer pure. However, at this moment, no one cared. Everyone watched with tears in their eyes, some even covering their faces, unable to bear the sight. Watching the Holy Son suffer, at this moment, regardless of whether they were believers or not, everyone felt a deep sorrow. Pope Joseph, his eyes brimming with tears, watched as his son struggled to his feet, only to be flung away once more. He could no longer contain himself and cried out in anguish to the 5 little greys, stop. He turned and pleaded urgently, son, don't worry about us. The 5 greys listened with amusement to the Pope's words. However, they were also wary, fearing that the son might actually retaliate. They still couldn't understand that strange power. Therefore, even though Jilu continued his attacks, he dared not launch a fatal blow, unsure if the son would truly surrender. Driven by the instinct for survival, how could anyone not fight back? They simply didn't believe it. To take the son's life, they needed to use other methods. Thinking this, Dal suddenly remembered something, a smile playing on his lips. He stopped Jilu's renewed attack and smiled at the billions of viewers in front of their screens. Let's play a game. With that, the scene before the viewers' eyes changed, switching back to the darkness of space. The scene still showed the yellow meteorite, hurtling at breakneck speed. Just as people were wondering what was happening, the next scene changed everyone's expressions. In the distance, the image of Earth appeared. As their faces paled, a mocking voice rang in their ears. See? It won't be long before the meteorite strikes your world, and your world will face its end. These words sent shivers down everyone's spines. But then, A single sentence brought a jolt of hope. However, we can spare your lives. The scene shifted back, and Dal said, I can give you a choice. What do you want to do? Pope St. Joseph roared. For some reason, he had a bad feeling, as if something he didn't want to see was happening, a familiar feeling. He felt uneasy and instinctively looked at his holy son. The people, oblivious to anything amiss, looked at Dal expectantly. Dal said, the game is this, you can choose between your holy son and your world. The audience was stunned. What do you mean? Pope Joseph's expression changed, a realization dawning on him, his unease deepening. Sure enough, the next second. It means, Dal said with a smile, uttering malicious words, if your holy son is willing to sacrifice himself for you, to abandon his own life, then your world can be saved. How about it? Is this game interesting? He grinned happily. Interesting? The four little gray figures beside him lit up. People fell silent, staring at the little gray figures in disbelief. Gil laughed. Haha, will you choose your own life, or the life of your holy son, or perhaps, your holy son is unwilling to sacrifice himself for you? He turned, looking mockingly at the holy son whose white robes were now stained black. Dal continued, the meteorite is controlled by our companions, you'd better not harbor any illusions. He smiled, I can give you time to think, but time is running out. Look, the scene changed, the meteorite was getting closer and closer to Earth. Seeing this, people panicked. Pope Joseph's eyes widened in fury, instinctively looking at the holy son. A gentle breeze stirred, lifting strands of his snow-white hair. The holy son looked at the people with a serene expression, seemingly unconcerned, yet also as if he had expected it. Could it be? Pope Joseph's eyes reddened. No, absolutely not. How could they? Before he could finish his thought, a phone suddenly rang on Captain Simon, the leader of the 20-odd soldiers. He answered it hastily, then suddenly became terrified, timidly running over. At the same time, the Pope's cell phone also rang. Soon, two aged voices came through, filled with pleading. Holy Son, please save us, Messiah, have mercy. The words seemed to be asking the Holy Son to use his power to save the world, or perhaps to sacrifice himself. Pope Joseph's face turned ashen. He recognized the voices, high-ranking officials from two great nations. You will go to hell, he cried out in grief and indignation. The two old men fell silent, feeling guilty but helpless. Even the slightest glimmer of hope was not to be ignored, whether for their own sake or for the sake of the people. The two old men's voices hadn't been heard for long before another person took their place. In just a short while, many people had called. Pope St. Joseph's eyes showed despair. Thank you for the 1,500 coin reward. Thank you for the 1,000 coin reward. Thank you for the 588 coin reward. Thank you for the 100 coin reward. Greek letter Omega, sorry for the late update. Chapter 414 The Mistake of Starting Over. 5 little gray figures watched with great interest. So, Holy Son, what is your choice? Dal turned to the Holy Son. Can you sacrifice yourself for humanity? Billions of viewers fell silent upon hearing Dal's words. They couldn't help but put themselves in his shoes. They thought, if it were them, they certainly wouldn't agree. Everyone has their own selfish desires. How could anyone? Do what you want, Messiah said peacefully, his voice like still water. The Holy Son. The audience was stunned and bewildered, their hearts filled with guilt. Pope Joseph fell silent. In a daze, he recalled the Holy Son's earlier words, what you want, I will give you. Did the Holy Son already know this would be the outcome? Why did you come? He said with a sorrowful expression. Holy Son, you did it for us, but what about yourself? The 5 Greys were astonished. You actually agreed. They looked at the Holy Son with apprehension, hesitant to act themselves. Finally, Dor had a flash of inspiration. He said to the Messiah, I respect you humans, and I respect your history. I've heard that you once sacrificed your life for humanity. So this time, let's repeat the experience. With a chuckle, he uttered chilling words, I remember hanging on a cross, right? Then this time it must be exactly the same, otherwise your choice will be invalid. As soon as he said this, people couldn't help but recall the Holy Son's sacrifice in history to atone for humanity's sins. Even those unfamiliar with the Bible had heard some of it. But it was precisely because they knew that they cursed the Greys' wickedness even more. The mistakes of the past will be repeated. After a moment of silence, seeing that no one had made a move, Dol said coldly, why aren't you making a move yet? You don't have much time. As he spoke, A huge projection appeared, showing a yellow meteorite that was very close to Earth and could hit at any moment. This image made people's faces change drastically, especially after the researchers confirmed that a meteorite was indeed approaching. Suddenly, a scream rang out, and hundreds of people outside the church groaned in pain. "There's a white cross in the church, I think it's suitable," Dole said calmly. "If we don't hurry, they'll die." The Pope and the soldiers' faces changed drastically. "Stop," the Holy Son said to the little gray people. Then, he turned to Captain Simon and the others and said something chilling, "Do as they want, eh?" Startled by the Holy Son's bloodshot eyes, Captain Simon felt a huge sense of guilt, as if he himself was tainted by sin. The screams echoed in their ears, the weight of humanity and the lives of hundreds pressing down on the soldiers' hearts, making it hard to breathe. Finally, the captain of the guard couldn't bear it any longer. "I am guilty." He staggered towards the church. The captain of the guard, Simon, was 42 years old and a devout Catholic. In his youth, he thought that becoming a guard of the Pope would bring him closer to God. He succeeded, he became a guard soldier, and as he grew older, he became the leader of the guards. At that time, he thought, perhaps I am already closer to God? But today, he regretted it. He was indeed closer to God, but from now on, he was a sinner despised by all. Simon felt despair. The large white cross was carried out. It was made of white stone, incredibly heavy. Dragging it across the ground left deep marks. Simon and 2 other soldiers struggled to carry it out. "You'll die on a high mountain with it," Dor sneered. Messiah remained silent, reaching out to embrace the heavy white cross. "I'll help you," Simon hurriedly said. The other 2 soldiers beside him, Norman and Maz, wanted to say something too. Unfortunately, before they could finish speaking, Jilu, one of the Greys, shouted, "Let go, he can only carry this by himself. If you help him, the previous agreement is null and void, you bastard." Simon was furious. Before he could finish speaking, his burly body was thrown away. "Know your place, you test subjects." Jilu waved his hand, a mocking look on his face. Messiah said, "Get out of the way." Norman and Maz, their eyes red, slowly released their grip. The white cross sank, pressing heavily on Messiah's thin shoulders. The Holy Son, Pope Joseph, stared blankly. Jilu looked at the Holy Son, who was struggling to support the cross, his eyes full of mockery. "Haha. Follow us." Several little Greys led the way, heading towards their distant destination. The flying saucer released its restrictions, and the hundreds of people outside the church resumed their movements. However, at this moment, no one chose to leave. After someone took the lead, everyone followed. They watched with red eyes as the Holy Son struggled to drag the cross ahead, their hearts aching as they followed behind. The sun was high in the sky, its scorching rays pouring down. In the high temperature, everyone was sweating as they walked, some suffering from the sunburn. But this time, no one complained of the discomfort. They all silently endured it, because someone ahead of them was suffering even more. Just then, the 2-meter-tall Nal suddenly said, "I can give you a chance. If you tell me where your abilities come from and who is behind you, I can let you go." How about it? Even now, he didn't believe that this guy called Messiah was some so-called son of God. Not only him, but the other little Greys felt the same way. They all felt that this guy was definitely hiding something. The walking Messiah paused, panting as he looked up at them. Under the gaze of billions, the Holy Son spoke, "To me, you have no rights whatsoever except those given to you by heaven. Therefore, it was God who entrusted me to you." The people listened in stunned silence, and the 5 little Greys understood. Upon understanding, they scoffed. "Nonsense," Karu sneered. "If your God is so powerful, why would he entrust you to us? Rights, huh? Rights ours to begin with. Your current state is our own doing." He looked utterly disdainful, thinking the Holy Son was insane. Otherwise, how could he utter such words? The 5 little Greys all scoffed. Pope Joseph stared at the Holy Son, seemingly understanding something, yet not quite. "If you don't want to listen, fine," Dal suddenly laughed, "then enjoy the rest of your journey." Chapter 415 The Son of God. "Go," Karu shouted, then waved his right hand. Messiah felt a tremendous force strike him from behind, and he staggered. This push was like the last straw. He fell to the ground, the heavy cross pressing down behind him. Bang! "Son of God," people cried out in alarm. Seeing the Son of God lying on the ground, frowning and trying to get up, some couldn't resist and wanted to help. But before they could take more than a few steps, They were restrained by several small gray people. "Don't go up there, or the agreement will be void." After threatening him, they looked Messiah up and down and burst into laughter. "Ha ha ha, what a sorry sight. So this is what the Son of God is like." Amidst the laughter, the blazing sun slowly moved across the sky, and several hours passed. In the reddish sunlight, a disheveled figure staggered along the mountainside, heading towards the desolate summit. Crack! A whip lashed across the white figure's back, causing him to stumble forward. "Hurry up," the five little grays chuckled. Suddenly, a specially made black whip appeared in their hands. Crack! Another heavy lash fell. Hundreds of people behind them covered their faces and wept. In the past few hours, they had witnessed everything: the Holy Son's purity tainted, the figure repeatedly whipped, leaving him in a disheveled state. Seeing the figure struggling ahead, Gil suddenly felt a mischievous urge and subtly hooked his hand. An invisible force appeared, quickly blocking the white figure's path. As expected, he saw the figure fall to the ground, heavily struck by the cross, looking utterly pathetic. "Ha ha ha!" A burst of laughter erupted. "Look, the Son of God!" The people behind covered their mouths, turning away, unable to bear the sight. The Messiah, clutching the enormous white cross, slowly rose to his feet. The five little grays, their eyes full of amusement, prepared to whip the Son again. Just when everyone thought this scene would continue indefinitely, a change occurred. A chilling voice slowly resonated in everyone's hearts. Whether it was the grays or the nearly 7.8 billion humans worldwide, everyone heard this emotionless voice. "Do you really think you can bear all of this? You want to save them?" 10,000 meters in the air, Su-Yun clenched his fists tightly, his eyes coldly fixed on the ground below. The experiences along the way had almost driven him to his breaking point. He was forcing himself to destroy it all. At this moment, he felt as if he had suffered a mental breakdown, splitting into two individuals. The Holy Son below wanted to save them, but he wanted to destroy everything. Like the legendary God and the Son of Man, one divine, one human. He didn't know if God truly existed, or what his feelings were when he saw the Son of Man injured. He only knew that watching everything happening below filled him with rage. The immense power made him want to destroy the continent below with a single blow. At this moment, he seemed to be talking to himself, as if asking the Messiah, or perhaps giving himself an excuse not to act. Near the summit, a gentle breeze blew, and everyone was stunned. "What was that sound?" "You heard it too." The hundreds of people following behind exchanged astonished glances. Even the five little grays were taken aback, glancing at each other before their eyes widened in surprise upon seeing the confusion in the others' eyes. Not just them, billions of viewers, no. The entire world heard it. Not a single person missed it, not even the little grays on the moon, who were stunned and bewildered. What happened? Everyone was a little flustered by the sound, then looked around and, upon discovering that those nearby, and even those far away, had heard it, they were instantly shocked. Just as the scene became chaotic, the Holy Son Messiah, whom they had briefly ignored, suddenly spoke, drawing everyone's attention, including the little grays on the moon, who all stared at the projected image. "They believe in me." Messiah's grime-covered white hair was gently blown by the wind. His voice, like flowing water, continued to murmur. "They believe I am the way, the truth, the life, and I cannot abandon them." Who was the Holy Son speaking to? But the crowd's confusion didn't last long before their expressions changed, for the voice echoed from the depths of their being. "The price of saving people is too high, no one can do it." Suddenly, Messiah looked up and cried out, "Father, you are omnipotent." Everyone was startled, including the five little grays, all staring in astonishment. "Who are you? Who is your father? You will give up your life for them." The voice from the shadows seemed to grow even colder. Everyone suddenly felt a chill, as if they would die at any moment, a feeling of terror gripping their hearts. Fortunately, with the appearance of a single sentence, this feeling dissipated considerably. "Father, forgive them. What they did, they do not know, and it has nothing to do with them." Everyone heard the Son murmur, "I am a good shepherd, and I am willing to give my life for my flock. No one can take my life, but I can offer it willingly." Everyone listened, stunned. Their hearts were filled with horror. Who was this person speaking to the Son? A frightening guess suddenly appeared in everyone's minds. Could it be the Father? This thought directly shocked them. The voice they heard, as if spoken by God, came from a sudden realization. Only the legendary God could make everyone hear such a thing, right? But the thought of God speaking to them filled them with fear. Because everyone's gaze fell upon the Holy Son, seeing his disheveled state. The Son of Man in this state, would God take his anger out on him? They already had the answer in their hearts. They sensed from the voice that its owner seemed angry. The consequences of offending God, those who understood shuddered. No one dared to imagine what would happen if an omniscient, omnipotent, and all-powerful being became angry. At the same time, as the Holy Son conversed with a mysterious being, they suddenly understood something. Could it be that the Holy Son was pleading with God for their sake? We were saved by the Holy Son once again. The Holy Son was sacrificing for us once more. The Holy Son, those who understood broke down in tears. In the crowd, a woman held a girl, weeping with her face hidden. Pope Joseph knelt on the ground, tears streaming down his cheeks. He murmured, "Holy Son, you did it all for us, but what about you, and who would give up everything for you?" A bitter feeling filled everyone's heart. Chapter 416 Suffering. The people were deeply saddened, while the five Greys were utterly shocked. Shortly after hearing the sound, they investigated through their auxiliary system, and the results were unbelievable. Everyone in the entire world had heard the sound. No, even their companions on the moon had heard it. This voice, reaching to the very core of their being, had such a vast range. Is there really an omniscient and omnipotent God? The five Greys wondered, bewildered. They felt their scientific thinking had been corrupted, influenced by this backward place. The five Greys' expressions shifted repeatedly, and finally, Nal gritted his teeth and said, "This must be some kind of technology. It was just a sound, nothing extraordinary," he told himself. Hearing this, the other four Greys' expressions of surprise gradually faded, and they became resolute. This was indeed a kind of technology. Thinking this, they relaxed. Their established knowledge and values prevented them from believing in such mysterious things, and even incomprehensible events couldn't easily sway them. After recovering, Dor immediately questioned Messiah, "What happened just now? What did you do?" Messiah paused for a moment, then asked, "Were you afraid?" Before the words were even out of his mouth, the other side's expression changed drastically. Dor shouted, "No. We were not afraid." Having come this far, they had no choice but to continue. To prove he wasn't afraid, Dor picked up a long black whip and lashed out fiercely. Crack! Messiah staggered. "Son of God, laughable," he sneered. "Keep going." The crowd behind him glared angrily. Some couldn't resist rushing forward, but the Son shook his head at them. Messiah raised the cross again and continued towards their destination. A few little gray figures, still not satisfied, began whipping him again from behind. Under even more brutal beatings, the crowd followed the Son slowly to the mountaintop, where everyone breathed a sigh of relief. It was an open space, yellow earth and boulders filling the ground. Looking about 20 meters away, a deep cliff appeared. A mountain wind blew, and reddish sunlight shone through the gaps in the clouds. Messiah stopped here, staggering and sitting on the ground, panting. The white cross rolled away. "Let's begin." "I don't need to teach you, do I?" Dal said coldly. A breeze blew by, but no one moved. People looked at the Holy Son with sorrowful faces. "HMPH, useless," Jilru sneered disdainfully. "Making us do it ourselves, what a hassle." He walked to the center of the clearing, pointed at the ground, and a hole large enough to insert a cross exploded open. He reached out, and the white cross flew up and then slammed into the hole, raising dust. Watching Jilru finish setting up the cross, Dal said to Messiah, "I'll give you one last chance." "Who's behind you?" Messiah remained silent. Several little Greys laughed. "Very good." Jilru's eyes flashed with cruelty as he took out something. A brown crown covered with sharp barbs half a finger long. The crown of thorns. The whole world was shocked, and then everyone who knew the inside story showed anger. Thorns are a curse, a source of suffering. No one in the world would wear a crown of thorns. "I think this suits you perfectly," Jilru grinned menacingly. "Aren't you the king of kings? This crown is quite nice, I'll put it on you again." He had only been in a moment of whim. But seeing the anger on the humans' faces suddenly brightened his mood. Then, something else appeared in his gray hand. 3 long, narrow black iron nails, each over 20 centimeters long. "Enjoy this," Jilru sneered, and with a wave of his hand, Messiah's entire body flew up, then with a thud, was firmly fixed to the white cross. Jilru tossed the thorn crown into the air, landing directly on Messiah's white hair. Under an invisible force, the thorn crown began to tighten inwards, the sharp thorns piercing inwards. At the same time, the 3 long black nails flew up, shooting towards Messiah's hands and feet like lightning. Thud thud thud. Messiah groaned in pain. 20-centimeter-long black nails pierced Messiah's hands and feet. Ah! Hundreds of people behind him screamed in terror. Ha ha ha, not bad. Seeing the pain on Messiah's face, the 5 little grays laughed gleefully. Billions of humans in front of the screen, watching this cruel scene, subconsciously tilted their heads. But then, someone exclaimed, "What is that?" Everyone was stunned, then saw a shocking scene. From Messiah's pierced head, and from his pierced hands and feet, streaks of pale golden blood flowed out. The blood flowed slowly down the cross. Drip, drip. Golden blood. The 5 little grays were stunned and exclaimed in shock. No one knew humans better than them. Their blood was almost always red, never this color. Pale gold. This was not something a human should have. Could he not be human? Just as the 5 little grays were thinking this, an even more astonishing scene unfolded. The thorn crown stained with pale golden blood suddenly underwent a strange transformation. Before everyone's astonished eyes, tender green leaves rapidly sprouted from the thorns. Soon, the once barren and unsightly thorns were surrounded by green leaves, and delicate, pristine white flowers slowly bloomed on them. This miraculous scene left billions of humans speechless. The 5 little grays were utterly bewildered. While they could accept the golden blood, this violation of natural growth was unacceptable. Golden blood was, after all, just a color of blood, something any creature could possess, but this violation of natural growth. In their shock, they disregarded everything else and hastily beckoned, each of them holding a drop of blood before them. The more they examined it, the more abnormal they felt. At this moment, Nar couldn't resist taking out a detector and placing the blood on it. Several beams of blue light swept across the blood, followed by a series of beeping mechanical sounds. Unknown blood detected, extremely stable structure, composition unknown. Life potential unknown, preliminary assessment of life cycle, beep beep beep. The red light flashed on the detector, seemingly stuck. The 5 little gray men were dumbfounded. They had never seen the detector malfunction before. This time, the red light flashed wildly, the instrument was overloaded, and blue smoke billowed out. Suddenly, the detector emitted a sharp sound. Immortal body detected. Immortal body detected. Eternal life has occurred. Bang! The machine stopped. A breeze blew, and the scene fell silent. Chapter 417 The Blood of Immortality. The sound of the instruments reached the ears of the 5 little gray beings and billions of humans, causing their eyes to widen in disbelief. Immortality. Nothing could describe their shock at that moment. The word immortality was incredibly powerful. For humans around 100 years old, it was the ultimate dream. The fear between life and death is immense, as evidenced by the countless emperors of ancient times who pursued immortality. Almost no one desired the ability to live forever. The word immortality could drive humanity mad. People had no doubts about the Holy Son's immortality. It seemed perfectly normal. Those with more imaginative minds quickly realized a crucial point. This time, the Holy Son's descent wasn't through a mother's womb, but directly into the world. Perhaps his body was directly created. How could a body created by a god have such a limitation as a lifespan? They suddenly understood. The 5 little gray beings weren't much better off. Even with their more advanced technology and lifespans far exceeding that of humans, there were still limits. The word immortality, even for them and their superior civilization, was filled with ultimate power. Therefore, at this moment, the 5 of them stared at the Holy Son with shock and greed. Why can this Messiah live forever? What if we could too? Wait, legend says this Messiah is the Son of God. Could it be true? Gil suddenly asked. Hearing his words, the other Greys also thought of this, and then became even more shocked. This Messiah really is the Son of God? There really is a God in the world? Plus, there are inexplicable voices in the world. Just the thought of it sent chills down their spines. They were afraid, but the desire for immortality made them greedy. If they could bring this Messiah back alive, no, even as a corpse, maybe after studying it, they could all live forever. Just as they were thinking this, they saw all the humans kneel down in a rush. They all looked at the Holy Son, who was fixed to the cross, his hands and feet bleeding, with worship and guilt. Drops of blood flowed down, splashing onto the rubble, staining the stones with an unusual luster. Some even noticed that the 3 black iron nails that nailed the Holy Son were gradually changing color under the flow of blood, turning into holy white. Just like the Son of God himself, holy and without sin. The little gray door couldn't hold back any longer. He said, Are you really going to give up your eternal life for them? I can give you. He couldn't resist any longer. He wanted this living, immortal being. Living was better than dead. If this guy was willing, they could spare him and take him back for research. Before he could finish, the Messiah on the cross spoke. Are you willing to spare them? The little gray understood them the Son of God spoke of, and his eyes instantly turned cold. If it weren't for the exposure, they might have spared humanity. But now that it was exposed, how could they possibly keep humans alive? An experiment without knowing the truth is different from one with knowing the truth. The former is content with mediocrity, while the latter can unleash unimaginable power, a power they dare not risk. Therefore, humans, these unstable creatures, should be exterminated. Moreover, their technology had almost reached a point they could no longer tolerate. Among the billions of humans watching, some intelligent individuals paled upon seeing and hearing the expressions of the few grays upon hearing this question. Blood dripped down the cross, and the crowd heard the Holy Son say, "You made your choice, and I made mine. You're courting death." The 5 grays were enraged upon hearing this. They had already shown little kindness, and this guy had actually abandoned his plan after secretly discussing it for half a minute using the device. "If you want to die, I can grant your wish," Dor said coldly. At this point, even if they wanted to keep this Holy Son alive, they couldn't. They had considered capturing him alive, but the mysterious power he had displayed earlier made them unsure if they could. It's difficult for someone to live forever, but it's easy to die. If this Holy Son wanted, they could use the humans to temporarily appease him and delay their deaths, but now it seemed impossible. As for the person hiding behind this Holy Son, or perhaps the omnipotent God, they weren't without their concerns. But having already made this Holy Son suffer so much, they didn't believe they could pretend nothing had happened. At the same time, they were also gambling. Gambling that the person behind this Holy Son wasn't an omnipotent God, but a bluffing fool. The odds of the two made them lean more towards the latter. An omnipotent God was simply too exaggerated, so exaggerated that they couldn't believe it. How could such a thing exist in the world? If it did, wouldn't the universe also be created by him? Just then, "You're trying to deceive us, Simon," the captain of the guards in the crowd shouted angrily. He noticed something unusual on the faces of these little grays and felt a sense of foreboding. The 5 little grays hid strange expressions. Billions of humans watching were stunned, and then they suddenly saw one of the 5 little grays suddenly pick up a spear that had been prepared beforehand. It was a golden spear with an extremely sharp tip. What was he going to do? Everyone was shocked. Then they saw the little gray holding that spear and thrusting it towards the Messiah hanging on the white cross. Kiru smiled cruelly. The sharp tip of his spear was thrust straight into the Messiah's heart. Thud! The golden spearhead pierced straight in, blood spurting out instantly, flowing onto the spear and dripping down. "No, Holy Son!" Captain Simon roared, charging forward. Many others followed, including the Pope. The 5 grays didn't stop them, merely stepping back and watching with smiles. Simon reached the cross, looking at the golden spear embedded in the Holy Son's heart, his eyes instantly filled with tears. Cough, cough, cough. Messiah coughed, a trickle of blood from the corner of his mouth. "You?" Simon turned and stared intently at the 5 grays. Looking at the humans surrounding the cross, Gil, who had thrust the spear, smiled. "Look at this," he laughed. A massive projection appeared, the image on it causing everyone's expression to change. The yellow asteroid that had been orbiting Earth suddenly changed direction, hurtling towards Earth at an unbelievable speed. "No, you lied to us," angry roars echoed. The 5 little grays all laughed. "Ha ha ha. Foolish humans, no, Holy Son." Looking at the dying Holy Son, the people's expressions were filled with despair. The little grays laughed loudly. Suddenly, the sky gradually darkened. Chapter 418 The Passing of the Messiah. On the mountain top, everyone looked up, staring blankly at the suddenly darkening sky. Dark clouds spread rapidly, the sky darkened, a cold wind howled, and a suffocating atmosphere filled the air. Everyone tensed up. The oppressive feeling weighed on their hearts, making them extremely uncomfortable. Even the 5 little gray people felt a sense of dread. This celestial phenomenon terrified those below, and a terrible thought arose in their minds. Was God angry? They instinctively huddled closer to the Holy Son, seeking protection, and at the same time, they couldn't help but look at him. The Messiah was on the verge of death, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. But even so, they still saw the Holy Son struggling to lift his head. The Son, so badly wounded, what could he do? Then they heard him cry out, "Father, don't be angry with them, this was my choice. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Don't blame them." A chill ran through the crowd. Their heads drooped. They couldn't believe it. Even in this state, the son was still pleading for their forgiveness. He was dying, and they were the ones who caused it. Why did it have to be this way? Their hearts ached. "I am a sinner," Simon murmured. He lowered his head and kissed the Messiah's feet. "Lord, forgive me." Prayers rose involuntarily, and everyone felt a pang of repentance. Just then, a smile appeared on the Messiah's face. No one knew what he was joyful about, but he said, "It is done." He looked up at the sky and murmured intermittently, "Father, I surrender my soul to you." With that, the Messiah closed his eyes. The people were stunned for a moment, then wept bitterly. After confirming through the instruments that the Holy Son's heartbeat and breath were fading, the 5 Greys all breathed a sigh of relief. Finally dead, looking at the dead Holy Son, Gil couldn't help but sneer. "You think your death will bring them back to life, or is it that God will appear?" With these mocking words, he let out a sigh of relief. Under the grief-stricken gazes of the humans, the other Greys laughed, about to say something. However, an unusual change occurred, startling them. Not long after the Holy Son's death, the pebbles on the ground began to bounce. The gun embedded in Messiah's chest fell directly to the ground. A handful of still warm blood spilled down. Simon, standing at the Holy Son's feet looking up, was caught off guard, and the blood splattered on his face. He cried out in surprise, blinking his eyes, which were wet with warm blood. Before he could react, a sharp pain shot through him. He groaned and bent over, covering his face. Simon's cry went unnoticed by the others, because an even more unusual change occurred. The sky grew increasingly dark, almost to the point of complete darkness, filling everyone with dread. Just then, a deafening roar echoed in everyone's ears. The earth began to tremble, a powerful earthquake striking the entire area, creating fissures in the ground. Terrifyingly, several nearby mountains, before everyone's very eyes, were cleaved in half by the cracks. Dust filled the air. The scene resembled the end of the world. The 5 little Greys were surprised, then something occurred to them. Nar tapped his wrist, commanding the auxiliary system to send out the cause of the event, and a projection image dozens of meters high appeared. The panicked crowd couldn't help but look over. In the projection, they saw a huge yellow meteorite, enveloped in crimson flames, hurtling down. As the meteorite rubbed against the atmosphere, intense light appeared, almost filling the screen with white light. Then they saw that the meteorite was heading towards a large city. The city was packed with people. They looked up at the sky, noticing the blinding white light, and screamed in terror. Several massive meteorites, each the size of a city, crashed down near the city. Boom! A deafening roar erupted instantly. Countless clumps of dirt splashed up like ocean waves, and a sea of dust shot into the sky, reaching tens of thousands of meters high. It was like billions of Hiroshima atomic bombs exploding in an instant, creating a cataclysmic event. The earth trembled, and a massive heat wave erupted at the meteorite impact site. The powerful shock wave, carrying intense heat, destroyed everything in its path. As the shock wave swept through, trees felled rapidly amidst flying dirt, and the shock wave reached the city. Skyscrapers, like bubbles, were swallowed up by the shock wave. Citizens, screaming and fleeing amidst the shaking earth, were cruelly and mercilessly engulfed. Boom! 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 The fiery shock wave swept across at incredible speed, quickly obliterating a city spanning tens of kilometers, leaving millions without a trace. In a short time, an area of over 1,000 miles was wiped out. The scene shifted, showing volcanic eruptions, powerful tsunamis soaring into the sky, and giant waves hundreds of meters high engulfing cities. This apocalyptic scene silenced humanity, leaving them clutching their mouths in terror. Was it all over? Was the world doomed? Lord, save us, a believer cried out frantically. 5 little gray people, seeing this, curled their lip, then smiled contentedly at the scene. The world was finished, mass extinction was imminent. The little gray people floated half a meter into the air, opening their mouths in mockery. Stop praying. Your God can't save you, and the end of the world can't be stopped. But as soon as they finished speaking, they noticed that the people below weren't swayed by their words. Following their gaze, the Greys noticed the dead Holy Son. What use is a dead man? Jilu scoffed. He raised his hand, ready to collect the corpse, intending to use it as a test subject. However, The next second, he was shocked to find that his power had failed. What's going on? He shook his right hand several times, but the corpse didn't move an inch. Jill's expression changed. Suddenly, amidst the prayers of the crowd, a strange phenomenon occurred. A ray of light appeared in the dark clouds, so dazzling that even the clouds retreated. The light grew stronger and stronger, then transformed into a pillar of light that shone down, directly enveloping the Holy Sun's location. Then, the light rapidly spread outwards from the Holy Sun's center. In an instant, the entire mountain was enveloped in light, and then the light continued to spread outwards at an astonishing speed. In the blink of an eye, the entire area in sight was covered in light. Everyone stared in horror. Chapter 419. The five Greys, breathing heavily, exchanged bewildered glances. How vast is this area? Now hurriedly controlled the auxiliary system, projecting the scene onto the screen. A completely new image appeared, like a view from high above. In the image, a halo of light expanded wildly, quickly exceeding the projection's field of vision. Startled, Nar involuntarily zoomed out again, revealing an entire continent. Before everyone's stunned eyes, a halo of light appeared in the center of that continent, then instantly covered all of Europe. Seeing the white light once again exceeding the projection's range, this time covering the entire continent, the five Greys were utterly astonished, frantically zooming out in terror. Soon, the blue earth appeared on the screen. Then, the five Greys were filled with fear. The white light covering the entire continent continued to spread at an extremely rapid speed. Within seconds, half of the earth was enveloped in white light, and then, within seconds, the entire earth was covered. Then, the white light once again exceeded their line of sight. It was still spreading outwards from Earth, and its speed was even faster. The field of vision shifted to the moon, which was completely submerged, and the light continued to spread. Amidst the screams of the five little Greys, the light engulfed the sun, and it was still spreading outwards. At this moment, trembling and fear appeared in their hearts. They could no longer observe, nor dared to look at the scene. They dared not think about whether the end of the light was the solar system or the universe. And just as they were filled with fear, another anomaly occurred. Beyond Earth, two vast white eyes appeared. Humanity all over the world, looking at the eyes that appeared in the projection, instantly fell into a state of suffocation. How huge those eyes were! Earth was pitifully small under their gaze. No, even the sun was not as huge as these two eyes. Compared to them, the sun was pitifully small. There really is an omnipotent God. The five little Greys trembled, their faces filled with fear. They regretted it, regretted why they had come to this terrifying earth, and why they had offended that holy Son, Messiah. The dozen or so little Greys on the moon couldn't help but hate Dor and his companions. At that moment, those two eyes coldly stared at Earth. Screams echoed across the world, everyone showing terror. Because in those eyes, they saw only indifference and coldness, as if the owner of those eyes was contemplating whether to destroy the world. Humans and Greys alike trembled under those eyes. It's God, God, Almighty God, forgive us, people prayed frantically, hoping for God's forgiveness. At this moment, they had long forgotten about the apocalypse. Compared to offending God, the end of the world was child's play. Unfortunately, no matter how much they prayed, they could only see the coldness of those eyes, and everyone trembled. We're going to die, they thought in fear. Just then, another anomaly occurred, startling everyone. A ray of light appeared on the corpse of the Holy Son, then condensed, and then vanished in a flash. Just as everyone was wondering what had happened, they suddenly noticed something unusual. Those two vast white eyes, the icy coldness they once held, softened, gazing gently at the world. It was as if a touch of humanity had appeared within them. The crowd stared blankly, before they could even grasp what was happening. When the two eyes suddenly turned in one direction, the five little Greys were terrified, thinking they were being looked at them, and nearly fainted from fright. They secretly used their auxiliary system to calculate, and concluded that the eyes were looking at the destroyed city. Why were they looking in that direction? They couldn't help but project another image, showing the scene from that direction. Then, everyone was filled with horror. The city, destroyed and reduced to desolate darkness, was rapidly changing. Dust and ash began to gather, splashed oil began to flow back, the ground gradually returned to its original state, and trees and buildings began to reappear. Like a rewind button being pressed, everything began to flow backward. Before long, all the previously dead humans reappeared in the city, looking around blankly, Everything restored to its original state. As for the meteorite, it vanished the very next second after appearing. And that wasn't all. As the city recovered, everyone noticed that everything around them was also returning to normal. Except for the humans, the effects of the earthquake and tsunami all began to flow backward. In no time, everything was back to normal. The whole world fell silent. People's eyes widened, their mouths agape. This was God. This was the power of God. The 5 little grays were incredulous, their faces filled with horror. This is absolutely beyond the capabilities of technology. Just then, people suddenly saw that the white eyes had returned to their cold indifference, as if humanity had vanished. The 5 little grays were startled, a sense of foreboding washing over them, their faces filled with fear. No. Don't, screams echoed in the ears of over 7 billion humans. Suddenly, holy white flames ignited on the 5 little gray figures, who were howling in despair within the flames. And unlike normal burns, their skin was disappearing, followed by muscle. God, I'm willing to believe in you. No, spare me. No, the 5 little gray figures screamed. A gust of wind blew, and objects fell to the ground. The 5 little gray figures were burned to nothingness, but miraculously, their belongings remained. Just then, the 2 white eyes flickered slightly and vanished before everyone's eyes. Everything returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. But just as they thought this, the image of the Son of Man on the cross constantly reminded them that this was not a dream. At the same time, people were shocked to discover that as the light faded, their diseases disappeared. This is a miracle. This was God's final blessing to humanity. People were stunned for a long time before slowly recovering from the shock. Just then, a sorrowful, aged voice rang out, drawing everyone's attention. The Pope, as if his soul had left his body, looked up at the Son of God and murmured to himself, "Our Son, crowned with thorns, bears all curses and suffering alone." As he chanted, he suddenly understood something and murmured, "God does not need human offerings, only the holy are sacrifices, and God's sacrifices are holy. The Son is holy and without sin, only the Son himself can be that sacrifice offered to God, and only then can we receive God's salvation." The others, listening to the Pope's verses, snapped out of their daze and quietly looked at the Son. Everyone was filled with sorrow. They knew that although the Son and God were one, the Son was not entirely God. That Son of Man had left for them. Tears streamed down people's faces. For our sins, he was wounded. For our transgressions, he was beaten. Through his punishment, we are healed. Tears flowed throughout the world, and people wept, covering their faces. In their days, people thought of something, and it seemed as if a voice echoed in their ears, "God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish. They will receive eternal life. Ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and it will be opened to you, for everyone who asks will receive, the one who seeks will find, the one who knocks will have it opened." If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 420, The Aftermath of God's Descent. Sorrow filled the world, and everyone looked up at the Holy Son and prayed, "Our Father, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven." The devout chanting echoed on the mountaintop, carried away by the mountain wind. After chanting the prayer for a long time, people stopped and began to consider what to do next, how to handle the Holy Son's body. Just then, following the sound of their voices, the people on the mountaintop suddenly heard a groan of pain. They were puzzled, their illnesses had clearly disappeared under the previous miracle. Puzzled, they looked in that direction. They saw that the groan was coming from a burly man. Upon closer inspection, someone immediately recognized him. It's Captain Simon. A soldier from the guard was astonished, not knowing what had happened to him. "Simon, you?" Pope Joseph walked to Simon, who was covering his face, and asked what had happened. "I'm fine." Feeling the pain gradually subside, Captain Simon released his grip, revealing a handsome, rugged face with a bit of a beard. As he let go and could see his surroundings clearly, he noticed something unusual. Pope Joseph was about to say something when he was drawn to Simon's eyes. "Your eyes, why have they changed color?" he asked in surprise. Simon's eyes, which were usually brown, now had a golden hue. The color changed. Simon rubbed his eyes in confusion. After Pope Joseph explained the color change, Simon was stunned. "I was touched by the blood of the Holy Son," he quickly explained. Hearing Simon's words, Pope Joseph was surprised, but also felt a surge of envy. Although he didn't know exactly what had happened, he knew it was a good thing. Simon also felt a change within himself. His vision was clearer, but he didn't know if there were any other changes. The hundreds of people around listened quietly, their eyes filled with envy and jealousy. Pope Joseph glanced at them and suddenly realized the seriousness of the situation. The Holy Son's body must be kept safe, otherwise something blasphemous might happen. He had never doubted this. As a pope, he knew all too well the darkness. Perhaps people wouldn't dare do anything to the Holy Son's body now, but as time passed, some would inevitably succumb to temptation and do something insane. The Holy Son's immortal blood had already left a deep impression on him. If other effects were added, those madmen wouldn't act rationally. Pope St. Joseph was just thinking of concealing it when his heart skipped a beat. He discovered that although the Grey Men were dead, their equipment remained, and it was still being broadcast worldwide. In other words, what they were doing was being seen and heard by the entire world. Oh no! He cursed inwardly. The reality was pretty much as he had thought. Although most people didn't think anything of it, with such a large number of people, there were always some who went mad. Those people were now looking at the bloodstains on the ground with the burning desire in their eyes. They dared not desecrate the body of the Holy Son, but they might be able to obtain the blood on the ground. Simon, sensing something amiss, whispered, "Pope, the Holy Son's body, put the Holy Son down first," said St. Joseph. Simon nodded. He called to Norman and Maz, and the three of them together lowered the Holy Son down. Several hours later, a crystal coffin was transported to the mountain top, and Simon placed the Holy Son's body inside. Simon devoutly kissed the Holy Son's fingers, murmuring, "My Lord, my God," before closing the crystal coffin. After the body was placed, the white cross stained with holy blood, the 3 white iron nails, the crown of thorns, and even the stones on the ground were all collected by the Pope's men. It was a thorough search, leaving the onlookers shuddering. Then, escorted by a surging crowd, the body and relics were taken to St. Peter's Basilica, where a large number of soldiers were stationed to protect them at all times. At this time, high-ranking officials from various countries contacted the Pope, offering greetings and subtly hinting that they might be able to take 1 or 2 stones. Unfortunately, Pope Joseph refused outright. He would never give away the things belonging to the Holy Son. Even if it was just an ordinary stone before, in his eyes now it was a sacred stone stained with the holy blood. "Really not," came the voice of an elderly man on the other end of the phone. No, Pope Joseph resolutely refused. Even when facing this high-ranking official from the United States, his tone was firm, seemingly unafraid of him. And indeed, the person on the other end showed no surprise or anger. The Vatican was different now. Although still a small, pitifully small country, its influence and deterrent power were no less than any major power, and no country dared to engage in such a blatant act of robbery. At least openly, they wouldn't dare. As for their actions behind the scenes, that was another story. "All right," the other end said regretfully, hanging up the phone. Afterwards, a barrage of calls came in, and Pope Joseph, relying on his inner strength, refused them all. However, he could still refuse the things concerning the Holy Son, and those people wouldn't dare to force him to take them. But he couldn't refuse the things belonging to the Greys. It wasn't that he couldn't force them to keep them, but the Vatican simply didn't have the capability to research those things. Besides, the Holy Son's things were already conspicuous enough. Keeping those high-tech items would offend everyone, something he knew he couldn't do. While the world was experiencing various events or chaos due to God's descent, the God in people's hearts was undergoing a crucial advancement. On the far side of the moon, Su-Yun silently felt the rapidly increasing threads of faith within his body. This global miracle had made him incredibly wealthy, with results far exceeding his expectations. The originally anticipated 500 million threads of faith had far exceeded his expectations, reaching 1.4 billion. In other words, he had now reached the standard for advancement. Now that he had the ability to advance, he didn't hesitate and immediately began the advancement process. Su-Yun released the restrictions within his body. The white that occupied 99% of the divine spark and characters swallowed the last bit of black. In an instant, a holy divine spark appeared. Buzz the divine spark hummed softly, and a white flame emerged. The divine spark then melted into a ball of white liquid. Chapter 421 Advancement to 9th Level God. The white flesh writhed and rapidly took shape. A dazzling white divine spark with 90 facets appeared within the divine spark space. As the divine spark formed, terrifying power surged forth, engulfing his divine body. The power increased more than tenfold in the blink of an eye. The power within his body leaked out uncontrollably, causing the light around him to intensify, transforming into thick, flowing flames. The next second, Su-Yun controlled the light and withdrew it. Level 9, he murmured. He clenched his fist, feeling the power more than 10 times stronger than his level 8 divine state. After a long while, he sighed. Although he had advanced, he wasn't particularly happy. Instead, he felt a pang of regret. To be honest, if he hadn't felt even greater power, he might have been satisfied. The power he possessed when he played God was hundreds of times greater than now. That kind of power meant that with a single move, he could wipe out any celestial body in the solar system, including the sun. It's just a pity, the consumption was too great. Just thinking about it made Su-Yun feel a pang of heartache. Despite his previous apparent power, his radiance even eclipsing the sun, seemingly granting him omniscience and omnipotence, it was all just a fleeting moment. He dared to gamble that even with the rules, his power might not surpass that of that time. To demonstrate that power, he directly consumed 6,000 level 9 faith crystals. Under this immense power of faith, his blessing technique reached an unprecedented level, increasing his strength thousands of times over from level 8. Equivalent to hundreds of times the strength of an ordinary level 9 god. In that situation, he almost believed he was truly an omniscient and omnipotent god. The surge in power made his mind somewhat unstable. I wonder how I compare to true god, Su-Yun murmured. But after a moment's thought, he shook his head. Probably still not enough. Even the banquet members who comprehended the complete rules believe the gap between them and a true god is enormous. It shouldn't be so easy to cross. Moreover, according to the rumors, a true god is a phenomenon in itself, a rather exaggerated description. So even with his strength at that time, he was somewhat uncertain about facing a true god. Forget about true gods, I can't even cover the solar system right now. The previous light, though seemingly vast, only covered a fraction of the entire solar system. Imagining the Milky Way and countless other galaxies in the universe, Su-Yun felt a sense of powerlessness. He seemed to still be a weakling. Su-Yun regained his will to work hard. Putting everything else aside, he at least needed to comprehend the rules first, otherwise, he might not even have the power to resist those banquet members or true gods. Furthermore, besides keeping 300 level 9 faith crystals, the rest had been used on the Ark of the Covenant, that miracle of the reversal of matter, or rather, the reversal of time. Su-Yun had considered keeping more faith crystals, but considering he probably couldn't defeat a true god, more wouldn't be useful. Those gods who had comprehended the rules should have enough with 300, even if they couldn't win, they could safely retreat, so he used them all on blessing spells. After a while, Su-Yun shook his head, focusing his attention on the rules. He had an additional gain while playing the role. The instant he gained so much power, he felt as if he had broken through some limit, briefly coming into contact with something profound. Although it was only for a moment, he remembered that the feeling came from the divine spark. He focused his attention on his body, then looked at the white, holy divine spark. After thinking for a moment, he concentrated his consciousness into the divine spark. As his consciousness entered the divine spark, he immediately felt something different, as if he had entered a mysterious place, filled with things he couldn't understand. Having experienced this before, he didn't choose to ignore it, but tried to immerse himself in it. As his thoughts slowly sank in, he vaguely comprehended something, as if he had transformed into light, touching everything that was light. Time seemed to stand still. When Su-Yun woke up, he didn't know how much time had passed. Frowning, he quickly scanned the earth with his mental power and found that 2 days had actually passed. What seemed like only a short time to me has actually taken so long. He was a little surprised. The previous feeling was like sleeping, making it impossible for him to distinguish the passage of time. This was even with him paying a little attention and not intending to stay immersed in it forever. Otherwise, if he had really been immersed, he wouldn't know how much time had passed in the real world. Looks like I need to practice a bit more to avoid completely immersing myself in it. If too much time passes and both the other world and the real world are ruined, that would be ridiculous. Putting aside everything else, if it went on for too long, Su-Yun even wondered if his physical body would be defiled. He was genuinely afraid that after some accident, His physical body would disappear and end up in some laboratory. If that happened, he might have to consider whether to actually cause a world-ending catastrophe. Like the legendary Great Flood, with his current strength, he could easily do it. After thinking about all this, Su-Yun refocused his attention on his divine spark, and soon frowned slightly. He found that after 2 days of comprehension, the feeling within his divine spark was still the same, seemingly without any change. To put it in concrete terms, it was probably less than 0.001. So difficult to comprehend. I must find a way to speed it up, he pondered for a long time, but couldn't come up with a solution, so he temporarily put the problem aside. Resisting the urge to return to his physical body, Su-Yun turned his attention to the moon. He was currently standing on the far side of the moon, in a very secluded corner. Besides the desolation, there were some other things here, a whole bunch of high-tech equipment. As for the little gray people who were originally here, he casually wiped them away. Looking at the technological equipment, Su-Yun was about to wipe it away again, but then he thought better of it and decided to keep it. It might come in handy later. After losing contact here, I wonder what kind of people this alien civilization will send. As long as this testing ground wasn't something that could be easily discarded, someone would definitely come here soon. He just didn't know their level of civilization. After thinking this through, Su-Yun looked at Earth, his mental energy sweeping over it. He suddenly frowned. It was nighttime in the Vatican, a little after 2 a.m. in that mental energy sweep. He had discovered several small insects, seemingly plotting something. Could they be spying on my body? Su-Yun couldn't help but chuckle, preparing to see what those creatures were up to. Chapter 422 Stealing the Sacred Relic. It was past 2 in the morning. A gentle night breeze blew, and the darkness enveloped everything. Vatican City. In a small alley a few hundred meters from St. Peter's Basilica, 2 men were talking. Carlos, do we really have to do this? The speaker was a tall, muscular man in his 40s with a thick beard, who looked honest but had a troubled expression. Matt, you know we have no choice. Last time we went to the Pyramid of the Sun, we didn't get anything. If we don't make some money this time, we'll be eating dirt, said Carlos, a tall, muscular man in his 30s with a handsome but rugged appearance and a mustache. Matt was annoyed. It's not my fault. I should have just grabbed a few things. Sigh, alright, stop talking, Carlos interrupted him. If we're careful this time, we'll just grab a little and then stop. If we're lucky, nothing serious will happen. Matt hesitated, but considering the recent situation, he could only nod in agreement. On the black market, anything related to the Son of Man fetches astronomical prices. Even a stone or a clod of earth stained with holy blood is worth over $1 billion. Not to mention the main items, the crown of thorns, the cross, the nails, and the lance. His eyes gleamed with uncontrollable fervor. Obtaining just one of these 3 items could easily bring in hundreds of billions of dollars. And that's just the black market price. Who knows how many times it might change hands, making the price even more terrifying. People believe that these items stained with holy blood carry the divine power of the Son of Man, possessing the ability to protect people or other unfathomable powers. Perhaps even the ability to communicate with God. It's easy to imagine how much attention these items attract. As for Matt and Carlos, even without obtaining those precious artifacts, just getting some oil and stone would make them incredibly wealthy, enough to live comfortably for the rest of their lives. So, after much deliberation, they set their sights on this place. Of course, this is also related to the fact that they don't believe in that particular god, but in the sun god. Otherwise, if they were true believers, they wouldn't dare to do such a thing. May God protect us, Matt murmured. Let's go, don't just stand there, Carlos urged. Matt quickly followed. The two emerged from the dark alley and quietly headed in one direction. Following the clues provided by their employer, they had roughly figured out the situation inside St. Peter's Basilica. As for where the clues came from, it was, of course, that someone inside the basilica had leaked the information. Before long, they arrived outside St. Peter's Basilica and slipped in through a back door. The defenses are too tight. From a hidden corner, Carlos and Matt glanced ahead, a look of regret in their eyes. Ahead, dozens of soldiers were guarding a hall, vigilantly watching over it. That was where the Holy Child's body and several other holy artifacts were kept. The hope for the holy artifacts is slim. After sighing, they chose to focus on another place, the place where stones and oil stained with holy blood were stored. Compared to this place, The guards there were much looser. Soon, they quietly arrived there and looked up to find 10 soldiers standing outside the hall. Carlos winked at Matt. Matt nodded and tapped a black watch on his wrist. Just seconds later, suddenly, the entire St. Peter's Church lost power, plunging into darkness. How could it be so fast? In the darkness, Carlos and Matt exchanged a bewildered glance. According to the agreement, after Matt pressed the button, the people inside the church would turn off the power. But this was too fast. They had only pressed it for a few seconds, and they had already taken action. Could they have been standing by the switch the whole time? After a moment of doubt, they couldn't worry about anything else. Whatever happened, they couldn't miss this golden opportunity. What happened? The 10 soldiers outside the church panicked after the lights went out. Just then, Carlos and Matt threw a flashbang into the group of soldiers in the darkness. A blinding white light burst forth, illuminating the darkness for a moment. Simultaneously, a deafening noise assaulted the 10 soldiers, plunging them into blindness, deafness, confusion, and panic, leaving them completely unable to react. Once the flashbangs took effect, Carlos and Matt rushed forward, wielding 2 black stun batons. Without a word, they began shocking the soldiers. Caught off guard, 2 soldiers were immediately stunned and collapsed to the ground. The other soldiers lost all sense of their surroundings, only knowing it was an enemy attack, completely unaware of what was happening. Under these circumstances, Carlos and Matt easily took down 6 soldiers. As for the remaining 4, weakened and barely able to resist, they were also dealt with. Carlos and Matt had just opened the hall's doors when they heard footsteps coming from inside, indicating that someone was guarding it. A beam of light shone in, and then someone fired. Bang bang bang. Matt groaned in pain, caught off guard and struck in the shoulder. Get out of the way, Matt's groan startled Carlos. The 2 rolled away to dodge the bullets, then each threw a flashbang into the hall. Watch out! Amidst shouts of alarm, chaos erupted within the hall. Get it and leave, Carlos said anxiously. The 2 rushed inside. As they stormed into the hall, a riot was taking place outside the hall where the Holy Son's body was kept. More than 20 burly men dressed in black were fighting with the guards outside the hall. Inside the hall where the Holy Son's body was kept, 5 burly men in black stood. Their gazes were involuntarily drawn to a crystal coffin in the center of the hall. In the darkness, a beam of light shone on the crystal, reflecting a stream of light. The 5 men in black looked on, and the next second, they showed astonishment. Lying in the crystal was a person, or rather, a saint. He wore a white robe, a green thorn crown, and his snow-white hair was loose. At this moment, he lay in the crystal, his face peaceful and serene, as if he had just fallen asleep. Anyone who saw him at first glance would think that the Holy Son was still alive. Because even after 2 days, the Holy Son's face was still the same as when he passed away, without the slightest change, just as if he could lie in it forever, and his body would never decay. It also seems that he will awaken at some point, overcome death, and bring salvation to humanity. Chapter 423 The Effects of Holy Blood. Seeing the crown of thorns on the Holy Son's head, a burly man in his 20s immediately turned red-eyed and involuntarily took 2 steps forward. However, before he could take more than a few steps, several people around him grabbed him. Are you crazy? The men who grabbed him glared at him angrily. They had already seen through his intentions and were not about to let him go any further. Number 6, if you want to die, don't drag us down with you, a man in his 40s shouted. Number 6, who had been pulled back, calmed down and thought for a moment, and cold sweat broke out on his back. Fortunately, the others had restrained him, otherwise, in his impulsiveness, he might have really done something, and the consequences would have been unpredictable. Perhaps, hell awaited him. Number 5, thank you, he said gratefully. Don't take the crown of thorns from the Holy Son, let's find something else, another burly man in his 30s said. Hurry up, if we wait any longer for reinforcements, we won't be able to leave, everyone agreed, and then began to search the hall. A white light swept across, and several items came into their view. Against the wall stood a large white cross, next to which lay a golden spear. 3 long, narrow white nails were also placed on a table. The 5 men were overjoyed and immediately reached for the relics. However, before they could take them, footsteps accompanied by a deep male voice rang out. Heretics! How dare you disturb the Lord? How dare you steal the relics? The men in black were startled, their lamps flashing as they looked towards the direction of the voice. A handsome, rugged man was glaring angrily at them. Simon, his clothes disheveled, had rushed here after waking up and happened to see the 5 men about to take the relics. These relics were not something these 5 sinners could touch, even though they weren't carrying any weapons. He stopped them without hesitation. One person, the men in the darkness, were taken aback, then chuckled. They wanted to ask, what gave you the courage to face them alone? And they recognized him too. It was the guard captain, the guy lucky enough to have his blood stained with the Son of Man's blood. Filled with jealousy, they were about to teach him a lesson. But when they made their move, they were shocked. This guy's skills. Simon felt everything slowed down 2 or 3 times. He easily caught the movements of these 5 men and dodged their punches. Thanks to his recently enhanced physique and strength, he was fighting 5 men hand-to-hand and even gained the upper hand. Use guns. Seeing they couldn't win in hand-to-hand combat, someone immediately pulled out a black pistol. Bang! The bullet whirled through the air. Simon's face tightened. Time seemed to slow down. He clearly saw the bullet heading towards his head. In this life-or-death moment, his blood rushed, as if something was surging within him. The 5 men in black stared in horror at Simon. White light emanated from Simon's body, surging forward. The bullet that had been fired was directly caught by the white light. The power of a god. They were horrified, a sense of fear rising within them. The white light easily reminded them of something. 2 days ago, this guy was tainted with holy blood, and now he was using this white light again. It was obvious that he had obtained the power of a god. Holy blood has this kind of effect. If this got out, it would cause a huge uproar. In an instant, a fanatical look appeared in their eyes. What about the holy artifact tainted with holy blood? Did it also have special power? If they obtained the holy artifact, would they also be able to use mysterious power? Thinking of this, they became even more envious of the holy artifact, and even had the idea of keeping it for themselves. Simon was also shocked by his own power and was stunned for a while. However, he did not doubt for long and quickly understood that this holy power could only have the Lord as its source. His emotions were turbulent, and his heart was filled with guilt. He had already felt guilty for his previous actions these past 2 days, and now seeing this power appear on his body again, and even saving his life, he felt even more guilty. Lord, why did you save a sinner like me? He murmured, and suddenly he saw something. How dare you? Taking advantage of his momentary lapse in concentration, those men actually tried to take the sacred relic. No, they actually managed to take it. The golden holy lance was in one of their hands. Put it down. Roaring, he instinctively unleashed his power, throwing a punch forward. A fist made of white light immediately whistled through the air. Boom! The white light grazed past a man holding the holy lance, blasting a hole in the wall. The man holding the holy lance was also grazed by the edge of the fist, immediately sent flying with a scream. Number 6, seeing Simon running towards them, Number 6, coughing up blood, flung the holy lance away. He shouted, "Run!" The holy lance landed in the hands of Number 5, the man in black. "Hold him back," Number 5 shouted sharply. After saying that, he turned and ran. Simon, furious, wanted to use his power to attack the man. At this moment, the other 4 men successively drew their black guns and fired at him. Left with no other option, he could only use white light defense. Bullets embedded themselves in the white light and then fell off with a clatter. Simon was about to give chase when a man in black blocked his path. He had just used the white light to knock the man away when he coughed up blood and flew backward, unable to get up. Several others then blocked his way. By the time Simon finished off these guys, the man with the holy lance had already escaped the hall. He was furious, but also filled with self-reproach. If he had mastered the power, that man definitely wouldn't have escaped. He glanced instinctively at his master in the crystal, but decided not to give chase. Outside the hall, the middle-aged man with the holy lance, Number 5, ran out. A man in black immediately saw him and ran to meet him. "Retreat," he shouted. The men in black began their retreat. Carlos and Matt were running frantically through a corridor, dodging the pursuers. With the help of flashbangs, they successfully obtained a stone stained with holy blood. The price they paid was high, however. Matt had been shot on the shoulder, and Carlos in the abdomen, both bleeding profusely. Gasping for breath and pale-faced, Carlos said as they ran, "I can't run anymore, you take the things and go." "No," Matt refused without hesitation. Carlos was about to say something when he suddenly noticed something. A series of noisy footsteps approaching in the distance. Chapter 424 The Power of the Holy Lance. The two men quickly hid, and as the sound drew closer, they saw about a dozen men in black running, seemingly hiding from something. Upon closer inspection, they saw something unusual in the hand of one of the men, a golden spear. The Holy Lance, my God, Matt exclaimed in shock. They instantly understood that this group had the same goal as them, and they had broken into the more important place. And they had succeeded. After a few seconds of shock, Matt suddenly remembered something. Guys, sorry, he pulled out his last flashbang and threw it directly at the group. He grabbed the stunned Carlos and ran forward. As for the Holy Lance, he knew his place and wouldn't covet something so deadly. The fifth man in black ran, stroking the Holy Lance with a gleeful expression. Now, the item was practically guaranteed. Just as he thought this, something flashed past, as if something had been thrown at him. Oh no, before he could even see what it was, a blinding white light and a loud noise filled the air. In an instant, all 10 or so men in black, including number 5, were affected by tinnitus and blindness, falling into a state of confusion. I'm sorry, may God bless you, Matt, who witnessed this scene from afar, feigned a prayer for them in the church. After saying that, he took advantage of the distraction and quickly slipped away with Carlos. While he was away, number 5 was in trouble. After falling into confusion, even after recovering, he was still caught up by the soldiers behind him. In just a moment, their numbers dwindled again, and in the end, only number 5 and 2 others escaped. In a dark alley corner, the middle-aged number 5 man in black, panting, had a face full of anger. Damn it, don't let me find you. He deeply hated the guy who secretly fired a flashbang and vowed to kill him if he encountered him. Thanks to him, he had experienced a life-or-death crisis and almost lost his life. At this moment, 3 men in black leaned against the wall, panting heavily in the alley. Number 5, number 9, what do we do next? Asked a man in his 30s with an ordinary appearance. He looked at number 5, who was holding the Holy Lance, and another burly man in his 40s. Number 9, in his 40s, replied, of course, we contact our superiors and hand over the Holy Lance. We've sacrificed many people, but as long as we have the Holy Lance, it's all worth it. If our superiors get the Holy Lance, they'll definitely reward us. It'll be a fortune we can never spend in a lifetime. As he spoke, greed gleamed in his eyes. Number 11, after hearing this, couldn't help but look at number 5, but he froze as soon as he saw him. Number 5 was stroking the golden Holy Lance, looking completely absorbed. Number 5, what are you doing? Number 11 chuckled. Even if you like it, it's not ours. We'll have to hand it over sooner or later. Yeah, it doesn't belong to us. Number 5 stopped what he was doing and said, seemingly sighing, do you think this relic might possess some special power? Special power? Number 11 and number 9, who had never seen Simon in action before, were taken aback. After a moment, number 11 laughed, maybe, but even if it does, it has nothing to do with us. Upon hearing this, number 5 suddenly replied inexplicably, that's not necessarily true. What? Number 11 was stunned, not understanding the meaning of this sentence. Suddenly, he saw number 5 walk to number 9's side, pull out a dagger from his waist, and stab it towards the other man's heart with lightning speed. Number 9, a middle-aged man, screamed, clutching his chest and collapsing against the wall to the ground. You? Number 11 was horrified and exclaimed, what are you doing? He reacted quickly, trying to pull out his gun from his waist, but before he could even put his hand on the gun, number 5 rushed forward with the dagger. After a struggle, number 11 collapsed to the ground, clutching his bleeding wound, glaring angrily at him. Why, this thing belongs to me, number 5 murmured fanatically. Number 11 was about to say something more in anger when number 5 stepped forward and slit his throat. Seeing number 11 lose consciousness, his face filled with hatred, number 5 picked up the golden holy spear, his eyes burning with fervor, and murmured, this thing belongs to me now. With these two dead, he could buy himself more time. Once he ran into the mountains and hid, no one would be able to find him. Thinking this, a look of joy appeared on his face as he caressed the golden holy spear. A few seconds later, he turned to leave. Unfortunately, before he had gone far, a gunshot rang out from behind him. In an instant, he felt a sharp pain in the back of his head, as if something had pierced through it. A scream rang out. Someone had fired at him. He turned around in terror and immediately saw number 9 holding a gun. How could this be? Number 5's first reaction was disbelief. He had clearly plunged the dagger into this guy's heart. How could he still be alive? While he was still in shock, he didn't realize that number 9 was looking at him with horror. After managing to fire one shot, number 9's right hand went limp, and the black pistol slipped from his grasp. "Why are you alright?" number 9 asked in astonishment. He himself was alright only because his heart had shifted slightly, but number 5, shot on the back of the head, could still turn around and hadn't even fallen yet. That bullet had hit his brain. He was sure he wasn't seeing things. He couldn't possibly have ignored the gunshot wound on number 5's head. Number 5, who had been gripped by terror and fear of death, froze. He realized he was still alive. Was the excruciating pain in the back of his head an illusion? With doubt, he reached out his right hand to touch the back of his head, and amidst the accompanying pain, he felt a hole in the center of his skull. He fearfully pulled his hand back, only to find it covered in blood. "I'm not dead," the question immediately gripped his mind. In his mind, how could someone shot in the head still be alive? After a few seconds of shock, he realized something and unconsciously raised the golden holy lance, his expression constantly shifting. It was because of the holy lance that number 9 saw his action and understood what was happening, his eyes widening in astonishment. The holy lance stained with holy blood actually possessed such power. After the initial shock, he felt a deep despair. He had still had a chance to turn the tide, but with this turn of events, all hope was gone. He glanced at the gun near his hand and gritted his teeth, wanting to pick it up again. Unfortunately, before he could even get the gun in his hand, number 5 noticed his movement, immediately grabbed the dagger in a rage, and charged fiercely at him. Chapter 425 Resurrection Day. Thud thud thud. After being stabbed several times, number 5, seeing number 9's eyes open in death, suddenly flung the dagger from his hand in terror. The dagger struck the hard ground with a crisp sound. Am I going to die? Even though he was alright now, the fear of being shot on the head filled him. Staggering, he frantically ran away. An hour later, number 5 was gripped by terror in a room. It was a bedroom, containing a large double bed and a mirror. He held the golden holy lance in his left hand and a cell phone in his right, staring at the image in the mirror on the phone. His hands trembled. A bloody gun muzzle appeared on the back of his head, and he even saw something white. His heart pounded, and he gasped for breath. The wound hadn't healed. He had pinned his hopes on the holy lance, but now that last glimmer of hope was shattered. Looking at the holy lance in his left hand, he was filled with fear. He wondered if he would die on the spot if he were separated from the holy lance. In his fear, he grabbed some transparent tape and began to wrap it tightly around his hand. He didn't stop until it was completely secure. Even after wrapping it, he was still somewhat lost. Would he be unable to live without the holy lance for the rest of his life? He trembled as he hugged the golden holy lance, gradually becoming lost in thought. In this situation, who could save him? Despair crept onto his face, a little after 4 in the morning. Vatican City. St. Peter's Basilica. The entire basilica was filled with sorrow. Everyone felt a pang of grief thinking of those who had sacrificed their lives that night. Especially since they had failed in their duty of guarding the basilica, allowing someone to break into the basilica and disturb the Holy Sun, and even losing the Holy Lance, which they had carefully protected. Thinking of this, the atmosphere in the basilica became even more somber. Some people even offered prayers of atonement outside the Basilica of the Holy Sun. In a meeting room, 3 bishops were seated, along with Pope Joseph, and Simon, the captain of the guard, stood to one side. Who sent those people? Which damned bastard is it? Bishop George demanded angrily. We haven't gotten any answers yet. They're tight-lipped, they don't seem to be from an ordinary organization, Simon interjected. Several bishops and the Pope's mood soured upon hearing this. I remember, someone broke into another place as well, Pope Joseph suddenly asked, frowning. Captain Simon nodded and said, those people are fine, it shouldn't be the same group, damn it. They think our Vatican has no one to rely on, another bishop named Danny exclaimed angrily. His words stirred resentment among the others. If the Vatican weren't so small, with so few soldiers, those people wouldn't have succeeded. Bishop George, realizing something, gritted his teeth and said, Pope, I suggest recruiting our own soldiers. This, St. Joseph hesitated. As a neutral country, the Vatican had never expanded its guard due to various reasons. Pope, Bishop George is right, we have too few people. What if this continues? It's alright if the relics are lost, but what if there's something wrong with the Holy Son's body? Bishop Danny advised. Pope Joseph, who had been hesitant, immediately made a decision upon hearing about the Holy Son. He knew that as long as the Holy Son and the relics remained in the Vatican, these kinds of incidents would continue indefinitely. In fact, if others saw the Vatican as so easily bullied, the offenses might become even more frequent. Finally, Bishop Michael, knowing the Pope's hesitation, added, "I understand your concerns, Your Majesty, but this concerns the Holy Son, and no one else can really say anything. We don't need too many people, just 1,000, enough to protect the Holy Son." Bishop Michael's words were like the last straw, making the already resolute Pope Joseph even more determined. He nodded directly. The three bishops and Simon breathed a sigh of relief. After discussing the issue, Bishop George hesitated for a moment, then suddenly asked, "Pope, what should be done with the holy body of the Son?" Pope Joseph was truly at a loss for words. To leave it there would be a desecration of the Son. But if he didn't leave it there, he didn't know where to place it. He had considered burying the Son, but a lingering concern, or perhaps a hope, remained, though he wasn't sure if it would happen. Then, lost in thought, Pope Joseph suddenly remembered something and became somewhat dazed. "George, isn't today a bit special?" Just as George and the others were momentarily puzzled, a quick thought struck them, and they suddenly remembered something they had forgotten because of the battle. 2 days had passed since that day. However, that was the normal way of saying it. According to Hebrew culture, today was the third day. The third day since the Passion of the Son of Man. "Today is exactly the third day," Pope Joseph murmured to himself. Simon and the others' breathing quickened instantly, their faces showing disbelief. They instantly understood what the Pope was trying to say. But was it really possible? A few seconds passed, and the people in the meeting room couldn't stay still any longer. They desperately wanted to see the sanctuary where the Holy Spirit's body was kept. "I'll go see." Bishop George stood up anxiously. With that, he strode out of the meeting room, and the Pope and the others quickly followed behind him. Just as they ran out, the dawn light came into view. The night faded, the sun rose, and the fresh morning air filled the air. The four of them paused briefly, then ran as fast as they could towards the sanctuary. Passing through an open space, the dozens of clergy who had been immersed in grief were stunned to see the Pope and his entourage running so unceremoniously. They swore to God they had never seen the Pope and the bishops run so carelessly before. The speed was so great that they initially doubted their eyes. What happened? What's all the commotion? In their shock and doubt, they even temporarily forgot their grief and unconsciously followed the Pope and the others. A series of noisy footsteps echoed inside St. Peter's Basilica, attracting the attention of not only some soldiers but also some believers who had come to investigate after hearing about the incident. Instinctively, they followed. Then, a strange scene unfolded inside the basilica. The Pope and his 5 companions were running ahead, while a large group of people chased after them. Chapter 426 The Holy Son has disappeared. Simon and his companions hadn't run far before they reached the chapel where the Holy Sacrament was kept. Some soldiers praying and guarding outside were stunned to see them. The large group of people following behind them particularly surprised them. They were unsure what was happening. "Pope, what's going on?" the leading soldier asked, puzzled. "We need to go in and check." Simon stepped forward. The soldiers nodded and led their men aside, making way for them. Pope Joseph and his companions, in their haste, didn't say anything and rushed inside. Those behind them weren't so lucky. They were all firmly stopped by the soldiers. As soon as they pushed open the door, their eyes fell upon the crystal coffin in the center of the chapel. One glance was enough to freeze them, followed by panic. The crystal was empty. The Holy Sacrament, which should have been inside, had vanished. What happened? Fear filled their faces. They rushed inside, carefully examined the crystal coffin, and searched the chapel. Then, their hearts sank. The holy relic of the Son of God had truly vanished, as if evaporated into the temple, leaving no trace. Just as they were thinking this, the holy cross and nails placed in the corner raised further questions. If an outsider had truly entered, they wouldn't have overlooked the relics and taken them. Moreover, with so many people guarding outside, how could anyone have moved the holy relic of the Son of God in full view of everyone? Pope Joseph immediately went outside the temple and said to the soldiers outside, "Come in for a moment." The 20-odd soldiers who were blocking others from entering hesitated, exchanged glances, and then entered. The 100 or so people who had been stopped were overjoyed. This was a great opportunity, a chance to get close to the Lord. Without thinking, they followed. With devout hearts, as if on a pilgrimage, the procession was not only orderly, but even the sound of their footsteps was hushed. However, the scene that greeted them after everyone entered shocked them all. The expected Holy Son was nowhere to be seen. Instead, there was an empty crystal coffin, and the Holy Son's body had vanished. Panic immediately erupted. Pope Joseph, ignoring the others for the moment, solemnly questioned the flustered soldiers. "Did you see anyone suspicious?" The soldiers hurriedly shook their heads, filled with trepidation. Under the Pope's series of questions, the soldiers all said they hadn't seen anything, didn't know what had happened, and didn't understand how the Holy Son's body had disappeared. These answers weighed heavily on the Pope and his entourage. At this moment, Simon suddenly thought of something, and his panic subsided. He whispered to Saint Joseph, "Pope, do you think the Holy Son might have left on his own?" Left on his own. Pope Joseph was stunned, his expression shifting between surprise and hesitation. Bishop George beside him exclaimed excitedly, "The Holy Son has definitely risen from the dead." In his joy, his voice carried throughout the entire hall, overheard by those who had come with him. After a moment of silence, everyone's eyes widened. "The Holy Son has risen from the dead, really?" A heated discussion broke out. After speaking, George immediately realized his slip of the tongue upon seeing the situation and awkwardly scratched his face. "Let's go look," Bishop Michael said impatiently. Pope Joseph, suppressing his composure, nodded. "You go." He turned to relay the order to the soldiers. Soon, soldiers began searching outwards from St. Peter's Basilica, each filled with anticipation and excitement. Besides the soldiers, hundreds of bishops, priests, nuns, and even local believers, upon hearing the news, joined the search. The entire Vatican was abuzz with excitement. The situation was quickly spread. In an instant, the world was shaken. High-ranking officials from various countries immediately ordered their men to keep a close watch and report back immediately if any news came. Some even boarded planes and headed towards the Vatican. On a private jet, a richly dressed middle-aged man was excitedly murmuring, "This time I must see the Lord." He was a Christian and had previously regretted missing the chance to see the Lord in person. Upon hearing the news, he disregarded its veracity and, driven by his faith, boarded a plane without hesitation. At that moment, many such believers rushed to the Vatican, and tickets were snapped up the moment they were released. Besides these people, the fifth man in black, who had been desperately clutching the Holy Lance in his room, saw a glimmer of hope in his despairing eyes upon hearing the news of the Holy Son's possible resurrection. The Holy Son, only the Holy Son can save me. While filled with hope, he also felt uneasy. He hadn't forgotten what he had done. Despite his constantly shifting expressions, he ultimately couldn't bear the fear of death and gritted his teeth, deciding to go. While everyone searched for the Holy Son, Su-Yun was walking, sensing the changes in his physical body. As his divine body returned to his physical form, a powerful energy was immediately released. The energy flowed, and his dormant flesh began to revive, wounds began to heal rapidly, and even his stopped heart resumed beating. Besides the revival of his physical body, his appearance underwent a final transformation under the influence of that energy. To put it numerically, the score of 94 began to rise 95, 97, 99. Feeling his physical body infinitely approaching perfection, the strange attraction surged, and Su-Yun's expression changed. He even discovered that even after changing his appearance, the attraction only weakened slightly, but it still existed. Anyone who saw him would still be unconsciously drawn to him. After a moment of annoyance, Su-Yun could only accept it helplessly and turned his attention to business. He arrived at a Vatican hospital, and looking at the cold corpses covered with white sheets because of the previous incident, and the wounded soldiers, a look of pity flashed across his face. One by one, the wounded soldiers lying in their beds, groaning, suddenly saw a holy figure. That figure was walking towards them from afar, and the painful groans subconsciously stopped. The more they looked at that figure, the more familiar it seemed. As the distance closed, when they saw the holy figure's face clearly, they stared wide-eyed in disbelief. It was a face that had sacrificed itself for the world, a face they would never forget. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.